Chapter 2706. Slaying God turned her body around and lifted her legs just as the hammers were about to hit her. She used her beautiful legs to block the impact of the hammers. Crack! Two huge hammers smashed hard on Slaying God's ankles. That excruciating pain sent chills down the spines of the onlookers just by hearing the sound of bones breaking. Unsurprisingly, Slaying God's ankles were broken. However, Slaying God did not care about that at all. She merely frowned slightly and endured the excruciating pain. She bent her body halfway and flung the ring on her finger upward just as the man with the hammers shattered her ankles. It was not a ring but a finger blade. There was a ring on the outside of the finger blade. A small blade was installed inside, and a mechanism was designed. Usually, the sharp blade could be hidden in the ring. When the target was close enough to press the mechanism, the sharp blade would come out. The moment the man broke Slaying God's ankles, she did not even grunt in pain. She flung the small blade in the finger blade and slit the man's throat. No one present had ever seen such a terrifying woman. She was able to kill her opponent at the same time that she was enduring immense pain. No one was born a powerhouse. An outsider would never be able to understand what a powerhouse had gone through. Pfft! Just as the man landed, Flying Snake's dagger stabbed into Slaying God's thigh. If the man's attack shattered Slaying God's ankles, then Flying Snake's attack was enough to make a living person suffer excruciating pain worse than death. Die! Die! Flying Snake grinned menacingly as he stabbed Slaying God's thigh. The 14-year-old Slaying God could kill so many people even when she was surrounded by 20 of the top 10 assassins on the International Secret Agent Assassin chart. Moreover, the man with the hammer was the #1 assassin on the International Assassin chart. She had killed him. She had only debuted for 2 years and already had such achievements. If Slaying God was allowed to grow in the future, it would not take long. In another 2 years, Slaying God would definitely become the one who replaced them. Flying Snake could not let that happen. Therefore, she stabbed Slaying God's thigh. Kill her. Quick! The Flying Snake yelled at the assassin standing behind it after stabbing Slaying God's thigh. The group of assassins and agents following closely behind were just about to make their move. Slaying God arched her hands into the shape of an eagle's claws and attacked the Flying Snake's eyes with both hands. It dug into the Flying Snake's pupils and dug out the Flying Snake's eyeballs along with its roots. Ah! Ah! The Flying Snake's eyeballs were suddenly plucked out by Slaying God. She let go of her grip and shrieked. Slaying God did not even blink. She pulled out the dagger that the Flying Snake had stabbed into her thigh and plunged it straight into the Flying Snake's heart. 10 seconds later, the Flying Snake struggled for a bit before falling to the ground with a thud, no longer breathing. Flying Snake, ranked #1 on the International Secret Agent ranking, and Big Hammer, ranked #1 on the International Assassin ranking, were killed. The 2 strongest people in the group were dead. He died in the hands of Slaying God, an agent who had only been in the game for 2 years. Everyone was stunned at this moment. The remaining 12 agents and assassins at the back stopped in their tracks, not daring to go any further. Regardless of whether Slaying God would die here today, this battle of life and death was enough to make Slaying God famous all over the world. However, just when everyone thought that Slaying God would not be able to stand up again, Xia Luo's eyes widened and everyone's faces turned pale with fear. Suddenly, a shocking scene happened. Slaying God tore apart the white shirt on the Flying Snake's corpse and wrapped it around her thigh like a bandage, adeptly wrapping it tightly around her bleeding thigh. He tied up the leg that was close to being crippled and stood up again in front of everyone. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2707. An Han Organization. Lin Wei stood in front of an inconspicuous villa in the Han Organization. An Han Organization was huge, as big as a maze. On the other hand, this villa, which was amazing in any corner outside, suddenly became inconspicuous in this place. Soon, a slender figure walked out of the villa. Seeing this, Lin Wei turned sideways and bowed slightly to the slender figure walking out of the villa. Young master. The person who walked out of the villa was the leader of an Han organization, as well as the young master of Cold Pavilion, the largest international firearms organization, CE. At this moment, he answered softly from his thin lips. CE walked past Lin Wei as soon as he finished speaking. When he walked past Lin Wei, he turned and ordered him, send her back to her place. Remember, don't tell her about my appearance. He was referring to slaying God. Lin Wei was stunned, but due to his status, he lowered his head slightly and nodded to CE. Yes, sir. Slaying God was severely injured after killing the top 10 assassins on the International Secret Agent Assassin ranking. However, with slaying God's stamina, she would recover in less than a month. Moreover, an Han organization's medical facilities were excellent. Slaying God could continue with the missions assigned by the organization after a month. However, due to the Bloody Night incident a month ago, Slaying God shot to fame and became the number 1 on the International Secret Agent ranking. Following that, her bounty increased significantly. The name, Slaying God, swept across the world at the speed of a roaring typhoon. 2 months later. Xia Multinational Group. There's still no way. Why is there still no way? A woman in her 20s held her head and slowly squatted on the ground. She was so anxious that her eyes were about to pop out. However, she did not cry. If it were in the past, she would have cried long ago. However, she could not cry now. Her father suddenly passed away in the company 3 months ago. Her mother was so heartbroken that she fainted and was sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. She was barely saved, but the doctor said that she might not wake up for the rest of her life. After the death of the Xia Group's chairman, all the shareholders withdrew their shares. Her relatives who used to follow her orders all came forward to snatch her father's company away. In just 3 months, Xia Luo went from a crafty and ruthless young lady to someone who was worse than an ordinary person and had nowhere to settle down. 3 months was enough to change a person. 3 months ago, Xia Luo used to be a spendthrift and yelled at the servants. Now, she was just an ordinary person. She wanted to keep her father's company. She even used her own ability to hold a shareholders' meeting, but without exception, she failed miserably. It wasn't that they didn't have the ability to do so, but that no one was willing to listen to a young lady whose family had fallen from grace. In the past, she had always been at the beck and call of the family. Could it be that it really ended just like that? Xia Luo's hand that was placed on the coffee table drooped down slightly. She stared blankly ahead. The series of blows over the past 3 months had caused Xia Luo to become shockingly thin. However, the moment Xia Luo's hand slightly drooped, a pair of white shoes suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. Are you willing to follow me? I can give you enough money to make a comeback. This voice must be the most beautiful voice that Xia Luo had ever heard in her life. Xia Luo lifted her head immediately and saw Slaying God's face wearing the same mask as the Bloody Night incident 3 months ago. You are. Xia Luo exclaimed. However, before she could finish her sentence, Slaying God cut her off and said, "You're right. From today onwards, the Xia Group will be renamed as the Rongyao Company. The young lady of the Xia Group, Xia Luo, is dead. You will be the president of the Rongyao Company, codenamed Demonis." M. Chapter 2708. Slaying God's words left no room for her to refute. She had guessed correctly that she would not reject her. A month later, the Demonis, who had cut off her long hair for 10 years, attended the shareholders' meeting. With her unique and amazing eloquence, she turned the tide and made the Xia Group, which had no hope of rising again, run the company's economy again. Slaying God did not simply pick Demonis to be the president of Rongyao Company. Before the Demonis family fell, she was indeed pampered and spoiled. She was so delicate that it was as if she had accidentally scratched her finger. It was as if she was about to die. However, Slaying God had her eyes on Demoness' ability. She was able to face reality and successfully hold a shareholders' meeting with her own abilities when her family was going through such a drastic change. Although it ended in failure. What happened in the future proved that Slaying God had made the right choice. Demoness had indeed done it. She had brought Rongyao Company to a stage that was even more glorious than Xia Group. Not long in the future, Rongyao Company would become one of the top 10 international corporations under Demoness leadership. Of course, these were things that would happen in the future. The flying snake that Slaying God had slain was the internationally renowned boss of Wuxia mercenaries. After Slaying God had slain Flying Snake, she led the forces that she had developed over the past 2 years into the Wuxia mercenaries. She took over the Wuxia mercenaries when the Wuxia mercenaries had no leader. Since then, Slaying God had become the boss of Wuxia mercenaries, the largest mercenary group in the world outside of Han's organization. Snake, Lizard and Tiger. Leopard were rescued by Slaying God after annihilating an assassin organization not long after her debut at the age of 13. Snake, Lizard and Tiger. Leopard were shockingly talented. One was skilled in using poison while the other had strong arms. They became Slaying God's left and right arms later on. Not long after establishing Rongyao Company and developing the Wuxia mercenaries, Slaying God found Qing Yu, who was almost killed in an assassin organization and had a particularly sensitive sense of smell. Little Qing Yu was still shivering when she was dragged to the snake. Read more chapter on novel full, I'll give her to you. She has a sensitive sense of smell. She should be a good candidate for making poison, Slaying God said after pushing Qing Yu to snake. Lizard. There really is such a cute person. Snake. Lizard studied Qing Yu from head to toe. From then on, Qing Yu became Snake, Lizard's first disciple. It had to be said that the most important talent in making poisons was the sense of smell. Qing Yu's sense of smell was as sensitive as a dog's. This was not a derogatory term. A police dog's nose was so sensitive that it could smell the things that a person had used and track the person's whereabouts. If one's nose wasn't sensitive enough, it would be like a teacher who had just graduated from primary school teaching. It wouldn't be convincing at all. When Slaying God turned 16, she requested to leave the Han organization in advance. Han organization approved. This was something that the Han organization had never done before. For an assassin organization like Han, even if the assassins and agents of Han fulfilled the 5-year agreement and obtained their freedom, they would not be able to survive in this world if they dared to leave. Slaying God became the first. The world only knew that Slaying God had retired from the Han organization based on her own capabilities, but they did not know that the leader of Han had gone easy on her. Otherwise, with Han's influence, it was impossible for Slaying God to grow to the point where the organization could no longer control her. It was only when Slaying God suddenly disappeared one day when she was 16 that the leader of Han organization secretly sent people to search for Slaying God's whereabouts. It was to no avail. It was only when Han's leader, Ce, learned that Slaying God had been searching for a treasure called the Sandalwood Box before she went missing. She only went missing after she found the Sandalwood Box. It was only then that Ce began to search for the Sandalwood Box in a frenzy, until he met a girl named Yun Jian who had a similar personality to Slaying God in a barren place called Xinjiang town of Longmen City. Author has something to say. The next chapter begins with the arrival of the cold demon. Smack. Smack smack smack, run away shyly. M. Chapter 2709. Leng Mei had no parents since she was young. She was an orphan. She was only 7 years old when the leader of the blood doll brought her home. The leader of the blood doll wasn't Di Lin, but his father, Di Luan. Di Luan was a very famous person back then. The blood doll organization was also very famous in the beginning. Leng Mei's real name wasn't Leng Mei. She didn't have a name. Her surname was given to her by Di Luan. Di Luan treated Leng Mei as his goddaughter because his wife wanted to have a daughter when she was alive. Unfortunately, she couldn't give birth to a daughter until she died. Di Luan loved his wife very much and followed her orders back then. So when his wife passed away, Di Luan found Leng Mei and took her as his goddaughter in order to mourn for her. Leng Mei was still very timid back then. When she was brought into the blood doll organization, she hid behind Di Luan and tightly grabbed onto his clothes. "Kid, she's your sister from now on," Di Luan said to Di Lin, who was only 10 years old back then, as he rubbed Leng Mei's head lovingly. Di Lin's skin was white and clear when he was 10 years old. Di Lin didn't have the habit of wearing black clothes and hats back then, so he didn't wear the black hat behind his collar. But that innate coldness made Leng Mei even more afraid. "I don't have a sister." At that time, the 10-year-old Di Lin only glanced coldly at Leng Mei, then turned and walked out of the hall. "You little brat." Di Luan was so angry that his whole body trembled. "Big brother doesn't seem to like me." Leng Mei tightly grabbed onto Di Luan's clothes and said to him in fear, "It's nothing. Mei, if that brat dares to bully you, tell Godfather. Ah, Godfather will help you teach him a lesson." Di Luan said softly as he rubbed Leng Mei's head that didn't even reach his waist. Leng Mei stayed in the blood doll organization for 10 days. She didn't see Di Lin during these 10 days. Leng Mei let out a sigh of relief and started to treat the blood doll organization as her home. She walked out of a large building in the blood doll organization. Suddenly, her vision blurred. Then, a boy half a head taller than Leng Mei pressed her against the wall and looked at her coldly. "Get out of here, or I'll teach you a lesson." It was Di Lin. Leng Mei was startled. She was so scared that she didn't know what to do. She grabbed Di Lin's clothes, her big watery eyes as dazzling as pearls. "Brother. I'm scared." At that time, Di Lin was stunned by Leng Mei's sudden words. The young Di Lin's face flushed red. Perhaps it was because Leng Mei was too cute. However, Di Lin quickly shifted his gaze to the side. "If you don't want to stay here, then just you wait." After saying this, Di Lin was afraid that Leng Mei would notice the abnormality in his expression. He snorted and turned to leave. This was the last time the 7-year-old Leng Mei saw Di Lin. The 10-year-old Di Lin had been sent to the Blood Doll Organization's Assassin Training Center by the leader of the Blood Doll Organization, Di Luan, and had started 9 years of assassin training. For the next 9 years, Leng Mei lived a very good life in the Blood Doll Organization. And Di Luan didn't really spoil Leng Mei at home. Di Luan knew that in their line of work, they had a lot of enemies. In order to protect Leng Mei, they had to train her to the point where she could protect themselves. Who knew that Leng Mei was very talented in this aspect? 9 years later, the 16-year-old Leng Mei was almost invincible in the Blood Doll Organization. Di Luan was very pleased. Mei, the Blood Doll Organization will be taken over by that brat Lin, one day. Although you're not my biological daughter, in my heart, you're already closer to me than my biological daughter. So as your father, I hope that you can stay away from all the darkness in the world and live a normal life. Father has already chosen some decent young masters from decent families for you. Take a look, if there's anyone suitable, you should get married as soon as possible. Di Luan knew that he didn't have long to live. That was why he wanted to arrange all this for Leng Mei at the age of 16. Di Luan had once been stabbed by someone near his heart. In recent years, that injury had acted up again and he often vomited blood. Di Luan was afraid that after he left, his son Di Lin would bully Leng Mei. That was why he said this to Leng Mei. "Father, I don't want to leave you." Leng Mei frowned and spoke her mind. "If you want me to live a better life, then you should get married." Di Luan covered his mouth and suddenly coughed violently as he berated Leng Mei. "Father, what's wrong? Haven't you recovered from the cold from last time?" Leng Mei saw this and stood up anxiously to ask Di Luan. I'm fine. As long as you promise me, my body will be better than anyone else. Di Luan coughed and said. Leng Mei lowered her eyes and agreed. Okay. She originally thought that her life would be obedient to Di Luan and marry an ordinary person. That would be it for the rest of her life. When she came out of Di Luan's bedroom, Leng Mei was still thinking about some fundamental questions. But when she passed by the door of the villa that had been abandoned 9 years ago, someone suddenly covered her mouth from behind. She didn't even notice that someone was behind her. When Leng Mei reacted, she was already tied to a wooden stool in a small attic. Her hands and feet were tied to the stool with hemp rope. When she saw the fair-skinned, handsome man in front of her, Leng Mei cried out loudly, "Woo woo! I told you to leave 9 years ago but you didn't. Did you forget my advice?" Di Lin, who had just returned from his studies, looked at Leng Mei with contempt. However, when he saw Leng Mei's delicate and soft body, he suddenly recalled the little girl from 9 years ago who was so frightened by him that she grabbed his clothes and called him brother. MMPH. Leng Mei shook her head. Her mouth was covered and she couldn't make a sound. When Di Lin saw this, his mouth suddenly went dry. His hand moved and a dagger appeared in his hand. "Huh, you don't know what's good for you. Seems like you won't leave until I teach you a lesson." With that, he used the dagger to cut Leng Mei's clothes in a punishing manner. Her thin clothes were cut by Di Lin. Leng Mei's thin clothes were torn apart, and her bra was also torn apart because of the force of the slash. The moment her clothes were torn apart, her white and full breasts were exposed without any reservation. New book release date is July 11, 2019. Death God and Killer Reborn on Campus. The first post on my QQ space is the new female lead's character design. Q number 2625702229. M. Chapter 2710. Di Lin didn't expect this either. He only wanted to scare Leng Mei away from Blood Doll, but he didn't expect that the knife would cut through her clothes and even cut through her clothes. Turning his head to the side, Di Lin's face was cold, but he couldn't forget the white skin that appeared in front of his eyes. Leng Mei was also frightened. Her hands and legs were tied to the wooden stool and she couldn't move at all. She could only let herself be exposed to the air. "Remember what I said. Leave Blood Doll, or I'll make you regret being born." Di Lin turned his head to the side and said coldly. With that, Di Lin turned to leave. But after taking 2 steps, Di Lin used the knife in his hand to cut through the ropes binding Leng Mei. He then took off his jacket and put it on Leng Mei. Without looking back, he turned and left. After Leng Mei was untied, the first thing she did was to tear off the white cloth covering her mouth and shout at Di Lin, who was walking out the door. "Even if you kill me, I won't leave as long as my father is here." Leng Mei was raised by Di Luan. Di Luan gave her fatherly love that she couldn't have. He gave her a warm and dependable family. To Leng Mei, as long as Di Luan was here, she wouldn't leave. She wouldn't refuse even if Di Luan asked her to go through hell. Di Lin's threats were useless against her. Di Lin took 2 steps out of the small attic of the abandoned villa and stopped at the entrance. After a slight pause, Di Lin strode out and left without looking back. 3 days later. In order to welcome his son Di Lin's return and to help him integrate into the circle, Di Luan held a banquet. Although the current Blood Doll organization was an international organization, it was still a small organization that couldn't be compared to a truly large organization. Di Luan was already very impressive to be able to develop Blood Doll to its current state from scratch. The guests of this banquet weren't important people from the international community, but people with some status in the world. Actually, Di Luan had 2 goals. One was to introduce his son Di Lin, and the other was to find a husband for Leng Mei. The first segment went very smoothly. Di Lin himself had the aura of a king, enough to suppress the crowd, so he quickly made friends with many of Di Luan's friends. Di Luan saw that things were going smoothly on Di Lin's side, so he let Leng Mei hold his hand and brought Leng Mei to meet the young masters of the righteous forces. Rather than a meeting, it was more like a blind date in disguise. Can you cook? The person Di Luan chose was a wealthy young master. At this moment, the young master was looking at Leng Mei with an interrogative expression. Leng Mei shook his head. Then can you bear me a son? This is the most important thing. My family property needs a son to inherit. If you can't give me a son, or if you give birth to a daughter after marriage, you can't blame me for going out to find another woman after marriage. The young master, who was only 1 centimeter taller than the man in flats, looked at Leng Mei with a wretched tone as if he was picking up leftovers. Indeed, Leng Mei's godfather, Di Luan, was afraid that Leng Mei wouldn't be able to get married and was frantically looking for a son-in-law for her. This made Leng Mei, who was only 16 years old, sound like an old leftover woman. Marriage couldn't be rushed. Now that Di Luan was anxious, things went in the opposite direction. Other than these, I'm very satisfied with you. In that case, we. The young master was still talking to himself. Leng Mei's frown deepened. If her godfather hadn't told her to forget her skills and become an ordinary person again, she would have grabbed this young master and given him a good beating. She's not getting married. Scram. Just as young Master Gu was still talking to himself, a fair hand wrapped around Leng Mei's arm. It was Di Lin. The young master of the imperial Linqiao dynasty grabbed Leng Mei and walked out in front of everyone. The crowd was left bewildered. Di Lin still maintained his cold face and dragged Leng Mei out of the banquet. He pinned her against the wall and looked at her with disgust. Father brought her up since she was young. How can you like someone like that? Are you trying to embarrass him? With that, Di Lin grabbed Leng Mei's chin and lifted her chin to look at him, provoking her further. Since you're so casual, why don't you be my mistress? Other than love and marriage, I can give you anything he can give you. Chapter 27:11. Leng Mei could hear the mockery in Di Lin's words. Leng Mei could hear the mockery and disdain in Di Lin's words. Leng Mei was not a weak woman. She fiercely shook off Di Lin's death grip and glared at Di Lin, saying, "Don't worry, I won't embarrass my father. I'll find a man who can make your blood doll organization proud." With that, Leng Mei turned around and returned to the banquet. For some reason, Di Lin's heart skipped a beat when he heard Leng Mei's last sentence. He was displeased for a moment. Very displeased. Leng Mei was angered by Di Lin's words. She was walking back to the banquet. Just as they were halfway there, the banquet hall was suddenly filled with loud noises. Leng Mei's footsteps paused as he suddenly had a bad premonition. She took a step forward and rushed back to the banquet hall. From afar, she saw her godfather, who had treated her like his own daughter since she was a child, lying unconscious in the crowd. Di Luan was dead. His death came even earlier than he had expected. In the end, the Grim Reaper didn't let him wait until Leng Mei was safely married off. Instead, he took his life. Di Lin stopped the banquet midway. The next few days were spent preparing for Di Luan's funeral. Leng Mei was in a daze. She often sat in front of her godfather's grave for an entire day. In Leng Mei's heart, Di Luan was her biological father. Perhaps to them, he was even closer than family. Leng Mei had no parents since she was young. Di Luan's fatherly love was her motivation. But to Di Luan, Leng Mei was the daughter of his beloved wife. Leng Mei was depressed for half a year. In this half a year, too many things happened. Di Lin replaced Di Luan and became the leader of the Blood Doll organization. In just half a year, Di Lin led the Blood Doll organization from a small organization in Southeast Asia to become the third most powerful assassin organization in Southeast Asia. This meant that in the near future, the Blood Doll organization would reach new heights under Di Lin's leadership. It wasn't something that the title of the third most powerful assassin organization in Southeast Asia could restrict. Di Luan's death didn't seem to affect Di Lin at all. Leng Mei, on the other hand, could not sleep well without eating. Half a year after Di Luan's death, Leng Mei was disheartened. Before she could repay Di Luan, the man who had raised her and treated her like his own daughter, he had died. Leng Mei planned to leave. Of course, before leaving, she went to see Di Lin. Di Lin was Di Luan's son after all. She couldn't repay Di Luan's kindness to her, so she decided to repay Di Luan's kindness to Di Lin. "You're leaving?" Di Lin asked when he saw Leng Mei coming to find him in his study. "Yes." Leng Mei nodded, not looking at Di Lin. "Father has left. I want to ask you if there's anything I can help with," Leng Mei said. Di Lin wasn't stupid. He immediately understood what Leng Mei meant. "You want to repay me?" Di Lin chuckled. Leng Mei did not respond, which was taken as a tacit agreement. "As long as I can help you, I'll do my best," Leng Mei said after 2 seconds of silence. "I'll satisfy you." Di Lin got up from his chair and strode to Leng Mei. He kicked the book on the desk, flipped Leng Mei over with one hand, and pressed her against the desk. With the other hand, he tore off Leng Mei's pants. He was as cold as ever. "If you want to repay me, I'll satisfy you. I need a woman to sleep with me. As long as you agree, father's kindness will be written off." With that, Di Lin tore off the last piece of Leng Mei's pants that covered her body. He took off everything on his lower body, lifted her beautiful legs, and the new book will be released on July 11, 2019. Death God and Assassin Reborn on Campus. The first post on my QQ space is the new female lead's character design. Q number 2625702229. M. Chapter 2712. Leng Mei didn't reject Di Lin in the end. Perhaps it was because she wanted to repay Di Luan's kindness, but Di Luan was dead and she couldn't do so anymore. So, she decided to return the favor to Di Luan's son, Di Lin. Of course, the main reason was that Leng Mei didn't hate Di Lin. When Di Lin pressed her against the desk and thrust into her body, Leng Mei grabbed Di Lin's shirt that he hadn't taken off and bit her red lips. She was so stunned that she didn't even make a sound. When Di Lin saw Leng Mei's frowning expression, his anger exploded. Originally, he wanted to gently cover her head and even bend down to kiss her red lips. However, when he saw Leng Mei's expression of forbearance for the sake of repaying his debt of gratitude, he instantly disappeared. Di Lin grabbed Leng Mei's slender waist with both hands and thrust inside her body. Because he had never had a woman before, Di Lin didn't know the meaning of gentle treatment. Leng Mei's upper body swayed left and right as Di Lin grabbed her waist. In the end, she grabbed the corner of the desk tightly to prevent herself from flying out. She knew that this was a loveless sex. After he was done, Di Lin didn't even look at Leng Mei, who was lying on the desk. He left a cold sentence and left the study. "If you want to repay my father's kindness, you can leave after I'm tired of playing with you." When he said this, the veins on Di Lin's forehead bulged. With that, Di Lin put on the black hat behind his black sweater, covering his fair face with the black hat. An imperceptible luster flashed in front of his eyes, but Di Lin quickly left. He was afraid that Leng Mei would think that she had repaid his kindness and suddenly leave after he left. So, he left those harsh words. After Di Lin left, Leng Mei put on her clothes. She sat for a while in the study where Di Lin's aura still lingered, then returned to her room. On the way back, Leng Mei met Ruo Yin, Di Lin's subordinate who had been following Di Lin ever since he returned to the Blood Doll organization. Leng Mei didn't know about Di Lin's past. She thought that Ruo Yin wasn't just Di Lin's subordinate. She even thought that Ruo Yin was just a tool to warm Di Lin's bed. Leng Mei didn't even look at Ruo Yin. She walked around Ruo Yin and wanted to walk forward. "Are you blood dolls, Leng Mei?" Just as Leng Mei was about to go around Ruo Yin suddenly called out to him. Upon hearing Ruo Yin's words, Leng Mei stopped in her tracks and turned to look at Ruo Yin. She openly admitted, "Yes." "What's the matter?" Leng Mei asked. "No." Ruo Yin shook her head and glanced at Leng Mei a few more times. This was the first time Leng Mei and Ruo Yin had met. However, Leng Mei mistakenly thought that Ruo Yin was also Di Lin's woman. Therefore, he did not have a good impression of Ruo Yin. Hearing Ruo Yin's words, Leng Mei turned and left. Ruo Yin stared at Leng Mei's departing figure for quite a while. Her voluptuous breasts and plump buttocks, her enchanting figure, as well as her slender waist that was wrapped in tights that could be wrapped with 2 hands. It had to be said that Leng Mei's figure and appearance could be called the #1 beauty in the Blood Doll organization. Unfortunately, Leng Mei was in the Blood Doll organization and was recognized as the #1 expert of the Blood Doll. Ruo Yin held her chin and looked at Leng Mei's departing figure, deep in thought. TSK, so this was the woman that the chief liked for so many years. Leng Mei? Chapter 27:13. Ruo Yin was indeed Di Lin's subordinate. Moreover, she was Di Lin's #1 subordinate. Di Lin was outstanding and was the target of many women's adoration. However, Ruo Yin did not like Di Lin. Moreover, Ruo Yin had someone she liked. The reason why Ruo Yin followed Di Lin was because she was very powerful. Di Lin needed a powerful subordinate like her. Ruo Yin needed Di Lin to get close to the person she liked. From then on, Leng Mei was Di Lin's mistress in the Blood Doll organization. This was something that everyone in the Blood Doll organization knew. Leng Mei did not care. She didn't care who had spread the news. Repaying her godfather, Di Luan, was the one thing that Leng Mei wanted to do the most. Di Lin would call Leng Mei to his room almost every night. After torturing her, he would let her return to her room. This seemed to have become a habit. 2 years passed just like that. 2 years later, Leng Mei was 18 years old. After being Di Lin's mistress for 2 years, Leng Mei's figure was much more voluptuous than when she was 16. Her chest was slender and graceful. Just walking out of the house would make people turn their heads. In the Blood Doll organization, Leng Mei, who had been Di Lin's mistress for 2 years, could do whatever she wanted in the organization. There were even people in the organization who claimed that Di Lin had no other women other than Leng Mei. He must like Leng Mei. Leng Mei would become the mistress of the Blood Doll organization's leader in the future. This was an unshakable fact. When these words came out, Leng Mei only smiled coldly. Others might not know, but how could she not know? When Di Lin was doing that with her, he had never kissed her lips. If Di Lin really liked her, how could he not kiss her? However, in reality, after being Di Lin's mistress for 2 years, Leng Mei's first kiss was still there. Today was the 20th anniversary of the Blood Doll organization. At the request of the higher-ups of the organization, Di Lin agreed to organize a camping trip. The Blood Doll organization's members participated. There were close to 50 people going together. The destination this time was a mountain called Qi Mountain. This mountain was nearly 2,000 meters above sea level. Although it wasn't very high compared to the highest mountains in the world, it was still considered high compared to ordinary mountains. Qi Mountain was surrounded by high and low cliffs. If one was not careful and fell down, even if one did not die, it would take a few days and nights to find someone. In short, not only was Qi Mountain far away, but it was also surrounded by clouds all year round. It was also abnormally steep. Leng Mei originally didn't plan to participate in this activity, but Di Lin added Leng Mei's name to the list without her consent. The Blood Doll members soon arrived at the foot of Mount Qi. From the foot of the mountain to the top, Leng Mei walked with Ruo Yin. Ruo Yin was a nice person. Leng Mei only found out later that Ruo Yin wasn't Di Lin's mistress. In addition, Ruoyin was the only one in the Blood Doll organization who was more forthright. Although the two of them would bicker, their relationship was still quite good. At this moment, Ruoyin bumped into Leng Mei and secretly whispered into her ear, "Aren't you going to go with the leader?" "Him?" Leng Mei was stunned. Then, she glanced at Di Lin, who was walking with the Blood Doll organization's higher-ups surrounded him, showing the demeanor of a king. In the end, Leng Mei shook her head, "He doesn't like me. Why should I go with him?" Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 27:14. Ruoyin was the first to be unhappy with Leng Mei's words. "He doesn't like you?" Ruoyin put her arm around Leng Mei's shoulder and said, Then tell me, do you like the leader?" Ruoyin's question was asked secretly. When Leng Mei heard it, she was stunned. Coincidentally, Di Lin, who was walking in front, seemed to have heard Ruoyin's question. He turned around and looked over. This glance caused Leng Mei to panic for no reason. "I don't like him," Leng Mei said without hesitation. Di Lin had already turned around. He looked behind Leng Mei and didn't look at her. He didn't hear what she said. "All right." Ruoyin wanted to tell Leng Mei that Di Lin definitely liked her. But after hearing Leng Mei's words, she instantly felt that even if she told Leng Mei that Di Lin liked her, Leng Mei wouldn't mind. "Ruoyin, Leng Mei, what are you talking about down there? Hurry up and catch up." At this moment, a cute-looking young man standing beside Di Lin waved at Ruoyin and Leng Mei, laughing merrily. "Talking about women's little secrets. Shoo shoo shoo, what would a guy like you know?" Ruoyin retorted with a half-smile. When she said this, she had a smile on her face, as if she was joking. But she still put her arm around Leng Mei's shoulder and followed with big strides. The peak of Mount Qi was quite cool. In this kind of hot weather, a place like Mount Qi was quite suitable for avoiding the heat. At night, a group of people set up their tents. They set up some charcoal fires at the peak of Mount Qi and started barbecuing. Although the Blood Doll was an assassin organization, it was an existence that ordinary people didn't dare to come into contact with. But the members of the Blood Doll were also normal people. Moreover, when the leader of the Blood Doll was still Di Lin, he was very friendly to his subordinates. Now that the Blood Doll was in Di Lin's hands, although he was much stricter than Di Lin, he didn't cancel some activities that the old leaders had always promised. For example, this time's hiking and camping activities. Barbecue. Ruoyin stood up and pulled Leng Mei, who was sitting in the tent, towards the barbecue area. Although Ruoyin was a powerful woman, she could still be an ordinary person at a time like this. Moreover, the old leader had always advocated the organization's activities so that the subordinates of the Blood Doll organization could live a normal life for a few days a year. "I don't want to eat." Leng Mei held her stomach and rejected Ruoyin. She didn't want to see Di Lin. "Then I'll get it for you later." Ruoyin could tell what Leng Mei was thinking at a glance. She didn't insist. 3 minutes later, Ruoyin grabbed a large plate of mutton skewers and walked towards Leng Mei while eating. I snatched it. "Here, let's eat together." Ruoyin stuffed a large plate of mutton skewers into Leng Mei's arms. The two of them looked at the stars and moon in the sky, chatting as they ate. In the Blood Doll organization, Leng Mei and Ruoyin were on par with each other in terms of strength. They were both young but not weak. Therefore, they had a common topic to talk about. He finished the last mutton skewer. Ruoyin took the plate of mutton skewers away. Ruoyin carried the mutton skewers to the barbecue area. "You two women are so wasteful. You don't even eat the fatty meat." A man saw them and laughed at Ruoyin. "I'm not the one who doesn't eat the fatty meat. These are all leftovers that Leng Mei doesn't want." Ruoyin pouted and retorted. Just as Ruoyin was about to throw away the rest of the mutton skewers, a large palm stopped her. The first thing she saw was indeed the leader's handsome face. Give it to me. Chapter 27:15. Almost all the meat on this plate of mutton skewers had been eaten. Only the fat on the mutton skewers had not been eaten. Di Lin suddenly stopped Ruoyin from throwing away the mutton skewers and said this. This shocked Ruoyin, and she immediately handed the mutton skewers in her hand to Di Lin. However, to everyone's surprise, Di Lin took the leftover mutton skewers from Leng Mei and ate the fat on the mutton skewers in a few bites. The subordinates of the Blood Doll organization, as well as the higher-ups, including Ruoyin, were all dumbfounded by what they saw. Leader, you. One of the Blood Doll subordinates saw this scene and exclaimed in shock. When my father was alive, he told you that no matter how rich you are, you must be frugal. Remember, don't let me see you wasting food again. After finishing the remaining fat on the mutton skewers from Leng Mei, Di Lin threw the toothpick on the ground, stood up, and said this coldly. Di Lin was a tall and skinny man. In addition to his chiseled face, he had a fair complexion that women would be mesmerized by. However, when he said this, everyone was shocked. Oh. Oh, oh. A male subordinate heard Di Lin's words and looked at Di Lin with a shocked expression. He nodded his head vigorously. Why did the chief suddenly cherish food so much this time? They still remembered that there was a time when they were scolded by their old leader for wasting a lot of food. Di Lin had stood up for them. Since when did the chief start to walk the old chief's old path? Cough, cough. Hear that. Since you heard it, hurry up and do it. Lick all the fat off the mutton skewers you're eating. Wasting food, shame on you. The little boy who had been following Di Lin looked at the Blood Doll members with a serious expression and said suddenly. When Ruoyin heard the little boy's words, she suddenly remembered the leader's words. She covered her mouth and snickered secretly. However, she could not help but think in her heart. Sigh, if Leng Mei also liked the leader, that would be great. At night, 2:00 in the morning. Leng Mei was nestled in her tent, but she could not fall asleep for a long time. It had been 2 years, and there were already 2 people by the chief's side. She had been his mistress for 2 years. When would he let her go? He retracted his hand slightly and hugged himself tightly. Leng Mei was the kind of person who could appear very lively and active in front of outsiders, but in fact, she was very lonely in her heart. Thinking about this, Leng Mei was about to fall asleep. There were dozens of tents set up outside. At this time, most of the people were already asleep. However, just as Leng Mei was about to fall asleep, her tent was suddenly pulled open. Then the person who had unzipped her tent closed it, suddenly hugged her from behind and stroked her. Leng Mei didn't need to turn around to know that it was the leader, Di Lin. Lord Leader, this is. Leng Mei was stunned. Then, he lowered his voice and hurriedly spoke. After being his mistress for 2 years, Leng Mei naturally knew what Di Lin wanted to do. But the moment Leng Mei finished speaking, Di Lin had already pulled off her pants and covered her mouth with his other hand. He took off her pants with one hand in 3 seconds. Surrounded by the tent set up by the Blood Doll members, she fell into a deep sleep. Then, he directly entered her. Author has something to say. I have a new book in my space, Death God and Killer Reborn on campus. The novel will be released on July 11th. Everyone can go and take a look. A certain idiot author's QQ number is 2625702229. Also, if you want to read other side stories, be sure to add me on QQ and let me know. Because after the side story is over, this book will truly end. Chapter 27:16. At an altitude of more than 2,000 meters, there were tents all around. Blood Doll's underlings were all lying in the tents. Di Lin tormented Leng Mei in her tent for an hour. Leng Mei bit her red lips hard, not daring to breathe too loudly. Just like before, Di Lin stayed with Leng Mei for an hour and did it for an hour. After he was done, he pulled up his pants and left. Lang Mei did not sleep the entire night in her tent. Since returning from Mount Qi, Lang Mei had been Di Lin's mistress for a few years while everyone was aware of it. And in these few years, Lang Mei's personality had also undergone a tremendous change. Lang Mei's usual weapon had changed from a dagger to a whip. Her 1.7-meter tall figure, coupled with her voluptuous breasts and voluptuous buttocks, made her a hot steamed bun in the eyes of men. Lang Mei had initially thought that her relationship with the chief would stay there for the rest of her life. However, she had secretly inquired about a mission. The chief wanted to send a letter to the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking, slaying God. Lang Mei had secretly accepted the mission on behalf of the chief. That could be said to be an act of suicide. However, she was not afraid. Moreover, it did not matter to Di Lin whether she would die or not. Therefore, Lang Mei had sneaked out of Blood Doll and went alone to look for Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking. She was an exquisitely beautiful girl. The first time she had peeked at Yun Jian from the dark, Lang Mei had been subdued by Yun Jian's aura. Lang Mei threw smoke grenades around her. The moment she appeared, she even made a snake-like sound. Oh, he. She had revealed Yun Jian's identity in front of Yun Jian and everyone else. However, she had not expected Yun Jian to turn her sharp gaze to her. She did not have to guess to know who she was. Blood Doll's top secret agent, Lang Mei? Lang Mei was shocked when her identity was revealed, but she did not show it on her face. She passed the letter to Yun Jian and wanted to sneak away with a smoke grenade. However, before she could run far, she was subdued by Yun Jian. He was then taken away by Qing Yu and Gu Nianji, who came later. In the beginning, Lang Mei was reluctant. Later, when she was at Qing Yu and Gu Nianji's house, they dragged her to play mahjong because they were bored. This rubbing is incredible. That period of time was simply the most comfortable period Lang Mei had ever lived. He didn't have to think about the leader, Di Lin, and spent his days playing mahjong. The most satisfying thing was playing mahjong. She, Lang Mei, would definitely win. He would let Qing Yu and Gu Nianji cook and wash his clothes for him if he won a round. Lang Mei felt that she could be Yun Jian's captive forever. Lang Mei was shocked when she heard that the chief had given the Blood Doll organization to Yun Jian in order to find her. However, she still wanted to stay at Qing Yu's house. Who wouldn't like to eat and stay for free? When Yun Jian took down the Blood Doll organization and agreed to let Lang Mei return to Di Lin's side, Yun Jian even went to Qing Yu's house to chase her away. You want me to leave? When Lang Mei heard that Yun Jian was going to let him go, his eyes widened in shock. Yun Jian nodded and kicked open the door to Qing Yu's house with one foot. She flicked her head to the side and revealed a playful smile, signaling Lang Mei to leave. I'm your captive. I'm not leaving. Lang Mei refused to leave no matter what. If one were to talk about captives since ancient times, Lang Mei would definitely be the first one who refused to leave from the bottom of her heart. Seeing how Yun Jian was shooing her away, Lang Mei hugged the door tightly and shouted at Yun Jian in exasperation, "Young master, you're not going to make it. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here. At most, I'll pay the rent. It's not like I can't afford it." Chapter 27:17. Yun Jian was bored by Lang Mei's rascally attitude. Although Di Lin had agreed to hand Blood Doll to her, the deal was for Lang Mei. Since Lang Mei refused to leave, she would not force her. What Lang Mei did not know was that not long after she stayed at Qing Yu's house shamelessly, Yun Jian had complained to Di Lin after she went back. The next day, Yun Jian led Di Lin and Ruo Yin to Qing Yu's house after making a big detour around Longmen City. Lang Mei wore Qing Yu's bunny compromise, a cute teddy bear pajamas. She was caught red-handed by Di Lin. In the end, she was dragged back to Blood Doll by force. After being pressed on the bed by Di Lin for 10 days and 10 nights, Leng Mei took the chance to slip away. This time, Leng Mei had learned her lesson. When Gu Nianji tipped her off that Di Lin was coming for her, she plucked up her courage and jumped into the pigsty. The pigsty in the countryside was not clean. The stench almost made Leng Mei faint. In spite of it, she went all out to leave the chief. In the end, she was forced to squeak like a pig. The last time was when Leng Mei grabbed Luo Mei's shoulder and wanted to drag her to find a handsome guy with a giggle, only to be caught by Di Lin. Leng Mei did not want to return to Blood Doll or be a mistress anymore, so she asked Di Lin to end their relationship. She did not expect Di Lin to grab her hand and cut her off. "I love you. That's why I forced you to be my woman back then. Listen to me and come back with me. Don't be stubborn anymore or I'll get angry." Leng Mei had Di Lin in her heart too. She had to admit that when she heard what Di Lin said, she was overjoyed. However, it did not show on her face. Reality proved that Leng Mei was indeed pressed on the bed by Di Lin for 10 days and 10 nights after he caught her. Leng Mei felt like her waist was about to break. If Leng Mei felt that Di Lin had changed in any way after this trip, it was that he had become more careful with her. Once, when she was taking a bath in the bathroom, she thought the door was opened and the person who came in was Ruoyin. Therefore, Leng Mei scratched his scalp and did not even have the time to turn his head to look. "Ruoyin, do you think? Is the chief really? Aya, why am I thinking so much? In any case, I don't like Sir Chief. I will definitely leave him. Definitely." After saying that, Leng Mei felt that it wasn't enough, so she added some more details. "Actually, I'm not afraid to tell you that the chief's place is small and narrow. It's not enough, you know. I don't feel good every time. Tell me, how am I going to find other men if I'm really left here by the chief for the rest of my life?" His words were so clear and logical that even Leng Mei himself felt that his words were reasonable. However, just as Leng Mei nodded and felt that what she said was very reasonable, she made up her mind to escape again. Behind Leng Mei, a voice that scared Leng Mei out of her wits suddenly rang out. Short and thin. "Are you sure?" This magnetic voice was just right for a man. There was no tenderness in his deep words. Leng Mei was so shocked that she immediately stood up from the bathtub. "Ah! Sir Chief! Why is it you?" Leng Mei was so shocked that her expression changed. However, Di Lin took a step forward and tore off his bathrobe. Just like that, he stepped into the bathtub that was not tall for him. He grabbed Leng Mei's slender waist and entered her directly. "Since you think that I'm small and narrow, how do you explain your expression of ecstasy?" Chapter 27:18. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. A photo album, He's Shameless, page 1/1, caught off guard, Leng Mei pounced on Di Lin. Her lips couldn't help but let out 2 moans. These 2 moans were so soft that even Leng Mei herself didn't believe it was her own voice. However, the truth was that Di Lin was not indecent and Leng Mei enjoyed it. However, Leng Mei would never admit it even if she was beaten to death. Until one day, Leng Mei sat on her bed. Di Lin walked in from outside. Di Lin didn't say anything. He just dragged her out. In the Blood Doll Organization's hall. When Leng Mei walked into the Blood Doll Organization's hall, she saw countless members of the organization's upper echelons. At that moment, the Blood Doll Organization's upper echelons were staring at Leng Mei as if they were looking at an unpardonable criminal. Leng Mei was bewildered by their gaze, not knowing what had happened. "Leader, did you really hand the Blood Doll Organization over to Slaying God for this woman?" One of the Blood Doll Organization's upper echelons glared at Leng Mei with his round eyes and asked. "Even if you usually dote on her, you shouldn't do that. Our Blood Doll Organization was developed step by step by the old leader to where it is today. How can we just, for a woman?" Among the blood doll organization's upper echelons, another one spoke up after the first one. They were all complaining about how Lin doted on Leng Mei. Everyone had seen how he doted on her in the past. It was not a big deal, so they let it go. However, this time, Lin had even handed the blood doll organization over to Slaying God, the #1 secret agent on the international secret agent chart, for Leng Mei. However, Lin heard all the insults directed at Leng Mei from his subordinates, but he did not say a word. Leng Mei looked at Lin and then at herself, puzzled. What did he mean? Did he want her to listen to the blood doll organization's upper echelon's prejudice against her? He wanted her to understand how stupid it was for her to steal the envelope that he wanted to send to Slaying God personally and send it to her without his permission. Leng Mei took a step back. It's my fault, Leng Mei. Cough. I'll take responsibility for what I did. From today onwards, I will withdraw from the blood doll organization. I will never harm you again. Leng Mei wanted to shake off Lin's hand, but she couldn't. She grabbed her hair coolly and said to the blood doll's higher-ups. She will leave the blood doll organization. When everyone thought Lin wouldn't agree, Lin suddenly said. After he finished speaking, Leng Mei was also suddenly stunned, and then his heart turned cold. So, he also wants me to leave the blood doll organization? If that was the case, then because in 2 months, she will marry me as the wife of the leader of the blood dolls. While everyone was confused, Lin suddenly pulled Leng Mei into his arms and declared his sovereignty in front of everyone in the blood doll organization. Leng Mei stayed in her room and had yet to recover. How could she? How could she agree to the leader's request? Where's the ring? It was a proposal ceremony. Not a single one. Leng Mei scratched his head helplessly. At this moment, Lin walked into the room. At the same time, he was holding a rectangular object in his hand. At first glance, Leng Mei thought it was a marriage proposal from Lin. As expected, Lin came to Leng Mei and handed the rectangular object to her. A marriage proposal. Leng Mei blushed when she heard that. She glanced at Lin with a "that's more like it" look, then took the rectangular object from him. It was a photo album. She flipped through 2 pages randomly. However, the moment Leng Mei took the photo album and flipped through 2 pages, her face turned redder than a monkey's butt. This photo album. It was all in this photo album. All of it. It was all of the expressions on her face and her long, slender legs that were wrapped around his body when they were doing it. There were also photos of her being intimate with him in various places. When did he do it? How could he take such embarrassing photos and save them in a photo album? Shameless. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 27:19. Leng Mei's face quickly turned red. She felt like her face was being burned by fire. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't control herself. What the hell is this? I don't want it. Leng Mei rolled her eyes and pretended that she didn't understand the contents of the album Lin gave her. She pursed her lips and reached out with her slender and beautiful hand, wanting to tear the album apart. How could she possibly keep something that would make her feel extremely shy? Other things aside, if someone were to see it, would she still have any face left? Just as Leng Mei was about to tear the album apart, Lin seemed to have known what she was going to do. He used his body, which was even taller than Leng Mei, to snatch the album from her hands. As a wedding gift, it's better for me to keep it. As Lin spoke, he raised the album high and turned to walk out of the door. Leng Mei was 1.7 meters tall. The moment Lin took the album from her hand, she jumped up to grab the album in the air but couldn't reach it. Give it to me. Give it to me. Leader, can you give it to me? I'll do whatever you want in the future. Give it to me. Leng Mei chased after Lin all the way out of the room. No one saw that the moment Lin walked out of the room with the album that Leng Mei begged for as she ran, his cold smile was slightly raised. There were still 2 weeks before the wedding that Di Lin promised her. In the garden. Lang Mei, who was taking Di Lin for a walk in the garden, had asked him for the 190th time. "Are you really going to marry me?" In return, Di Lin replied patiently, "Yes." He had been waiting for this day for a long time. Lang Mei gulped and looked up at Di Lin. She used a different method to ask the original question, then, "Are you really going to marry me?" "Yes." Di Lin didn't get annoyed by Lang Mei's question. His slender hand interlocked with Lang Mei's slender hand. He stared at her with undisguised adoration and replied solemnly. Lang Mei gulped softly, suppressing the joy in her heart that could not be expressed. She smiled and looked at Di Lin. "Is this okay? I was only your mistress before." At this critical moment, Lang Mei became shy. She glanced at Di Lin like a flower waiting to blossom. Before she could finish her sentence, Di Lin grabbed her wrist and said coldly, "Don't worry, Mississippi, who said you were my mistress?" He had never treated her as his mistress. "That's what the organization said. I was only 16 back then and you forced me." "Isn't that your mistress?" Lang Mei didn't understand why Di Lin was so angry. She turned around and pouted. Just as she was about to explain, Di Lin's expression changed. A large head had already descended from above. He used his handsome lips to capture her small mouth tightly, and they tossed and turned. Damn it! Who was the one who said the word mistress? From the very beginning, he had never intended to treat her as his mistress. It was only a matter of time before she married him. On the day of Di Lin and Lang Mei's wedding, Yun Jian and the others were invited to visit as promised. "Sister Jian, why don't I see Lang Mei and her husband?" Qing Yu tugged at Yun Jian's arm and asked her excitedly. "Sob, sob, sob. Lang Mei is getting married. Will she still play mahjong with us in the future?" Gu Nianji rubbed her eyes, which did not have any tears at all, and said with a pained expression. "What mahjong? You'd better get rid of that stalker who's been following you." Qing Yu shook Gu Nianji's arm lightly and glanced behind her. She saw a man in plain clothes standing there. It was obvious that he was waiting for Gu Nianji. It was Li Nong. "Right, Sister Jian, where do you think Lang Mei went? Why hasn't she come out to play with us yet?" Qing Yu stomped her foot and asked Yun Jian. Yun Jian's lips curled into a half-understood smile as she chuckled faintly. "Maybe she's doing something unspeakable. In a certain bridal room. The wedding was not over yet." Don't. Chief, don't tear it. Be gentle. You'll be found out later if you tear the wedding gown." Her soft and delicate female voice was met with a certain someone's deeper treatment. The night was still young. Their story was not the end but the beginning. Chapter 27:20. How nice would it be if you were a boy? If you weren't a girl, you'd be the boss. You'd be the most favored eldest son of the Cheng family. God, why are you doing this to us? The words Shenji had heard the most since he was young were his mother hiding in her room, wiping away her tears as she nagged. She was a girl, not a boy. This was her mother's lifelong hatred. She hated that she was not a boy and could not bring her mother a promotion in the Cheng family. Therefore, Shenji had been ordered around by the Cheng family since she was young. She was already tired and numb. Although Shenji was young, she was very mature. When she was 5 years old, she chose to escape from such a family. She knew that her mother, who hated and loved her at the same time, followed her all the way. After she chose to leave with someone who gave her snacks, her mother, the woman named Yunhua, hid in a corner and cried for a long time. She was only 5 years old, a little girl who did not even know what death meant. Her disappointment in the word mother was something that outsiders would never understand. In the end, the woman who called her mother only dared to hide in a corner and cry as she watched her leave. In her first year in the Hun organization, Shunji was already invincible. Perhaps others did not know why she was invincible, but she knew it very well. That was because after she was cruelly abandoned by her family, she no longer cared about her life and survival. Even if she died, such a life without goals was meaningless to her. People who were relaxed and unburdened were more likely to succeed because they were alone in the world and did not need to leave any way out for themselves. On the other hand, those who had families, children, and people they cared about would be overcautious and could only be ordinary people for the rest of their lives. Shunji belonged to the former. Like slaying God, she risked her life when she was ruthless. Even if someone stabbed her with a knife, she would not care about her wound and would kill her opponent first. Just like that, when she first entered the Hun organization, almost none of the children were her match. That was until she met the girl who had lost her confidence in survival but reignited her goal, 006. She had defeated her. She even looked down on her. Loser. Shunji could not help but feel her blood boil when she heard that 006, I'll remember you. I'll defeat you. The young Shunji shouted at slaying God. From then on, defeating slaying God became Shunji's only goal. This was Shunji's goal and at the same time, it was her motivation to survive. She did not have a good childhood. She did not miss her past. She had even thought of giving up on life. Perhaps to others, defeating slaying God was just a display of competitiveness. To Shunji, it was her motivation to survive. It was no longer a display of competitiveness, but a goal that she would never forget. However, one day, the woman she would never be able to defeat, slaying God, died. When Shunji first heard the news, she was thunderstruck, but she chose to continue living because she had chosen to protect Wuxia mercenaries on behalf of slaying God, that foolish woman. She knew that she would not leave. She would come back one day. Slaying God in 2019. But slaying T slaying T. She just wanted to have a good sleep, a sleep that she would never wake up from. She wanted to fight again in her next life. By then, she would definitely defeat slaying God. She would never go back on her words. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 27-21. No. Please don't bully me, I'll listen to you. I'll listen to everything you say. Please don't bully me anymore. The moment Lin Mengyu pushed her into the toilet, the original owner of Yunjian's body, Yiji, was terrified. Little bitch. You seduced my man, do you think I'll let you go just like that? Go. Shove her head into the cesspool in the toilet. Make her eat shit all over her face. Let's see if Ingjun still likes this bitch's face in the future. Lin Mengyu ordered her two lackeys mercilessly. At this moment, Lin Mengyu's two lackeys pressed Yiji's shoulders and pushed her into the smelly toilet. Yiji's fear came from the depths of her soul, and her expression changed. The next second, she fainted and her mind went blank. When Yiji woke up again, she was in a storeroom. She pressed her head and forced herself to sit up straight with a trembling face. But when she saw a male figure suddenly appear in front of the storeroom under the moonlight, Yiji was so scared that her whole body trembled. Just as she was about to shout, the male figure standing far away appeared in front of her in a flash and reached out to cover her lips. Don't talk, the man said coldly. Under the moonlight, Yiji hugged her body in fear and didn't say anything else. But she saw a faint light coming in from the window and shining on the man's face. The man was wearing a ghost mask all the time, which gave Yiji a great fright. Ah! Yiji was so scared that she shrank into the corner as fast as she could, but she still couldn't help but scream. Yuan Jin massaged his forehead and walked towards Yiji. Yuan Lin. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me, Yuan Lin said coldly to Yiji and nodded. He came here with a purpose, to find Yiji. From Yuan Lin's words, Yi learned that she had been reborn into another person's body. And her original body was Yun Jian's. She was just a puppet that couldn't be contained in this world, a puppet that shouldn't have been born in this world. The moment she knew the truth, Yi shrank her body and replied to Yuan Lin with a single word, "Oh." The original owner of Yi's body was called Yi. She was a little beggar, and now she was doing odd jobs in a brothel. Because Yi's body was shriveled and she looked thin, no one wanted her even when she was married. So she was just doing odd jobs in the brothel, that was all. Yuan Lin didn't seem to have a proper job. She was doing odd jobs, and Yuan Lin just stood there and watched without saying a word. Ping, Yi was wiping the bowls and chopsticks on the table. Suddenly, the bowls and chopsticks fell to the ground. She quickly squatted down to pick it up. "Little bitch. I told you to be careful. How dare you smash the bowl?" At this time, the mother of the brothel saw this scene, grabbed the feather duster and rushed over to beat them. Yi est Yuan Lin t est. Yuan Lin was cruel. To him, Yi was just a stranger. He wasn't a stallion that would reach out to any woman. "Please don't hit me," sob, "please don't hit me." Yi woke up from her dream. She saw Yuan Lin standing beside her. She was so scared that she hugged her chest and shrank into the corner. Yuan Lin's eyes twitched when he saw the tears in her eyes. He didn't say anything. He grabbed Yi's ankle and dragged her out from the corner of the bed. Then he tore off her clothes. Yi wasn't wearing a bra. Her chest looked flat. Yuan Lin never saw Yi as a woman. But when Yuan Lin tore off Yi's clothes, her chest, which was wrapped under her clothes, looked flat, but was abnormally full. Seeing the scene in front of him, Yuan Xing's entire body froze. "What are you doing?" Yi was scared by Yuan Lin's action. She shrank back into the corner and wrapped the blanket around her chest. At this moment, Yuan Xing walked to Yi's side and pulled her clothes away from her chest. He said indifferently, "Apply the medicine." When Yi heard this, although she was shy, she gave up struggling. What Yi didn't know was that when Yuan Jin was applying the medicine on Yi's body, his eyes were always attracted by the beautiful scenery in front of her chest. His eyes kept glancing there. Author has something to say. Author Yan's QQ number is 2625702229. Her new book's character design is the first post on the forum. Everyone can take a look. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 27-22. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Yi didn't notice that Yuan Xing was looking at places he shouldn't be looking at when he was applying medicine on her back. Without the cover of the blanket, Yi was naturally a little embarrassed. She wrapped her hands around her chest and let Yuan Xian apply medicine on her injured chest and back. "Take your hand away," Yuan Xing said seriously when he saw Yi covering a place she shouldn't be looking at. With that, Yi's face turned slightly red. "But I'm embarrassed." However, before she could finish her sentence, Yuan Xing had already reached out and pulled Yi's hand away from her chest. He applied medicine on her. After that, Yuan Xing didn't look at Yi again. He was like a homosexual who had no interest in women. He turned and left. Yi shrunk her body and looked at the place where Yuan Jin disappeared. She swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said nothing in the end. Days passed by. Yi helped to serve tea at the back of the brothel. Her small face was covered in black charcoal. It covered her original beauty and made her look ordinary. On top of that, she had a small and shriveled body. Therefore, in the brothel, even though Yi was a woman, none of the customers liked her. They would even take a detour when they saw Yi. However, Yi was very hard-working. Although she was often beaten by the mamas in the brothel, they didn't hit her anymore. Yuan Xing. Yuan Xing. On this day, Yeji rushed into her room with a letter in her hand. Her life in the brothel was getting better and better with her own skills. Mama Mulberry also liked her more and more because of her diligence and her ability to work as hard as 3 people. He's not here. Ah. Yi Ji looked around and didn't see Yuan Xing. She put down the letter in her hand. She sounded disappointed. Looking for me? Just as Yi Ji was disappointed, a man's voice came from behind her. Yuan Xing. Yuan Xing. Look at this. Yi Ji heard Yuan Xing's voice. Her disappointment turned into joy. She put the letter in front of Yuan Xing. What's this? Yuan Xing took the letter and opened it. There were a few dollar notes in the letter. They were old and worn. The money I earned. It's a reward from Mama Mulberry. Yi Ji happily raised her head and puffed out her chest. Come with me. Let's go buy some candied fruits. Yi Ji grabbed Yuan Xing's cold hand and ran out. They bought 2 candied fruits. Yuan Xing took one for her. Yi Ji sat by the roadside and licked the candied fruits carefully. She didn't want to eat them all. Yuan Xing was bored. He was in the 90s. He had a mission. He didn't think he was Yi Ji editor, endless fantasy translation, but for some reason, he couldn't walk. She watched as Yi Ji licked all the candied haws until not even a speck was left. Yuan Xing stretched out his hand and handed over the candied haws that he had not eaten. Aren't you not? Yi Ji licked her hand, which still had a trace of the sweetness of the tanghulu. She raised her head and looked at Yuan Jin, who was handing her the tanghulu, with a look of surprise. Yuan Xing looked away. He didn't look at her swaying upper body as he answered Yi Ji. Yi Ji looked excited and happy. She sat on the flower bed and swayed her upper body. The girl didn't know that her swaying posture reminded a certain someone of the endless scene he saw when he applied medicine for her. A certain someone had a physiological reaction because of her actions. Book Guesthouse Reading Website. Chapter 27-23. Although Yi Ji was timid, it was the kind of fear that came from the depths of her soul. However, being timid didn't mean that Yi Ji was stupid. On the contrary, Yi Ji was quite smart. When she was reborn into this little beggar's body, although she had an unforgettable fear of people, Yi Ji understood that in a place like a brothel, a girl had to disguise herself if she wanted to leave with a clean record. Therefore, she didn't hesitate to make herself look dirty every day. She smeared her face until it was as black as charcoal and her entire body looked like it had rolled in a smelly ditch. People would smell her from afar and wouldn't want to get close to her. However, no matter how smart Yi Ji was, she couldn't tell that Yuan Xing had a physiological reaction to her. After licking the candied hawthorn in her hand, Yi Ji walked back with Yuan Xing side by side. Halfway through, Yi Ji touched her dirty face and turned her head to look at Yuan Xing with a smile. Yuan Xing, I'm saving money now. When I have enough money, can I go home? The home she was referring to was the home with Qin Yiru and Yun Yi. Although Yi Ji already knew from Yuan Xing that she was a puppet that the heavens and earth couldn't tolerate, a soul that didn't belong to this world, she had to endure hardships. As long as she went back, her mother and brother wouldn't mind having an extra mouth to feed. Moreover, she could have an elder sister, the original owner of her body, Yun Jian. Okay, Yuan Xing responded. Yuan Xing didn't know that his response made Yi Ji work harder in the brothel. However, the good times didn't last long. The brothel was closed down and the brothel owner's expenses were reduced to 0. Therefore, he sold Yi Ji to Sister Lu, who worked in the entertainment industry. This time, the bitter days of the past reappeared. Sister Lu arranged for Yi Ji to stay at the bottom of the stairs, a place that couldn't even be compared to a small attic. She made Yi Ji follow the crew every day and act as a logistic support, moving heavy props around. Sometimes, when she wasn't satisfied, she would be beaten by Sister Lu. Yuan Xing didn't stop Sister Lu from hitting her once. Instead, he followed Yizhi and only stood to the side and watched when Yizhi was bullied. When Yizhi was covered in wounds, he would apply medicine for her. To Yuan Jin, Yizhi was an insignificant person. This was one of the reasons why Yuan Jin could only watch and not do anything. The second reason was that the mysterious man was still secretly searching for him, so he couldn't expose his whereabouts. After Xing Feng was captured, Xing Feng entrusted all the hopes of changing the future to Yuan Xing. If Yuan Xing went to find Yun Jian now, he would be discovered by the mysterious man. Besides, the time wasn't right. He couldn't ruin all his plans just because of a woman who didn't mean anything to him, Yizhi. Moreover, Yizhi had never complained about it. On the contrary, when Yizhi was bullied, the first person she thought of was him. She would complain to him about the injustices she had encountered. No matter what happened, she would immediately complain to him. But just when Yuan Xing thought that Yizhi would always treat him as the first person in her life to talk to, the first person she cared about, one day, Yizhi met Yun Jian. Not only did Yun Jian tell Yizhi that she was under her protection, she even helped Yizhi hit the top actress in front of everyone. This made Yizhi's heart pound like a little deer. As usual, when Yuan Xing came to Yizhi's bedroom that day, he saw Yizhi staring at a corner and smiling foolishly. In the past, at this time, Yizhi would have already complained to him or told him what she had always wanted to say. But today, what are you smiling about? Yuan Xing couldn't help but interrupt Yizhi's smile. But she asked him if he was looking for her to send a letter to Yun Jian. Of course, Yuan Xing denied it. Who would have thought that Yizhi would say something that would cause Yuan Jin's heart to choke? Then you don't have to look for me in the future. I have friends. She was chasing him away. This was the first time she said something like that to him. Chapter 27-24. Okay. Yuan Xing's handsome face under the mask only twitched a little. He had only uttered a simple and nonchalant "okay" back then and turned to leave. Only God knew how complicated his feelings were back then. Yuan Xing had indeed left. A few days later, however, Yuan Xing could not help looking for Yizhi again. He did not know that Yizhi was trying on the hair clip that Yun Jian had given her. Yuan Xing had to admit that a ball of anger was slowly burning within him. He thought that Yizhi would have a good chat with him after not seeing him for so many days. Who would have thought that Yizhi would extend her hand to ask for a letter, saying that she had told him not to look for her if he had nothing to do and that if he did, it would be because he had something for her to pass to Yun Jian. Of course, he did not. Yuan Xing was furious. Still, he took out the hair clip and gave it to her. Yizhi misunderstood and thought that he was giving the hair clip to Yun Jian. Later, Sister Lu appeared and wanted to hit Yizhi. For some reason, Yuan Xing felt that Yizhi would completely distance herself from him if he did not do anything. Hence, he did. After that, when Yuan Xing looked for Yizhi again, she had already been brought back to Longmen City by Yun Jian. Yuan Xing did not plan to meet Yun Jian back then. The timing was not right. However, he could not help himself from not seeing Yizhi, so he took the risk of being caught by Yun Jian and snuck into Yizhi's room again and again. Like a thief, he would sneak in when Yun Jian was not home. However, he went to Longmen City and took the risk to look for Yizhi a few times. The last time, Yizhi pouted and chased him away. If you're fine, don't come looking for me anymore. I'm going to school soon. Also, if you come looking for me here often, Sister Yun Jian won't be happy. Sister Yun Jian. Yizhi kept calling her Sister Yun Jian, infuriating Yuan Xing. Grabbing her hand, he pulled Yizhi along and jumped out of the villa's second-floor window without another word. Yizhi clung to his clothes in fright, her small body leaning into his embrace. At this moment, Yuan Lin's annoyed mood finally eased a little. Yi Ji was taken away by Yuan Xing again. When Yuan Xing came to this era, the four seas were his home. But it was different from before. In the past, he was the one who watched over Yi Ji's life. Now, he was the one taking care of Yi Ji. He wanted Yi Ji to have a better life. Holding Yi Ji's small hand, Yuan Xing felt great satisfaction for the first time. "Do you want to eat tanghulu?" Yuan Xing asked Yi Ji. Yuan Jin did not have a fixed home. He had no one to rely on. Although he did not lack money, he would not stay in one place for too long. He brought her to a hotel before they even went to a city. But she didn't seem happy. "Oh." Yi Ji nodded listlessly as Yuan Ying held her hand. Yuan Jin bought 10 sticks of tanghulu for Yi Ji. Yi Ji ate in small bites, but she was still unhappy. "Do you want to eat anything else?" Yuan Jin asked as he reached out and wiped the candied haws stuck to Yi Ji's mouth. His tone was still cold, but Yuan Xing knew that this was the greatest gentleness he could give in all these years. He and Xing Feng had traveled to so many places and killed so many people just to change the fate of Yunjian's group. Their hearts had long since died. But for Yi Ji, he had no choice but to reopen his heart. "I don't want to." Yi Ji shook her head. She suddenly raised her head. Under Yuan Xing's expectant gaze, she shared her girlish secret with him like before. Yuan Xing, I'll tell you a secret, okay?" "I'm listening." Yuan Xing's lips curled up slightly. He thought that Yi Ji would become dependent on him again, but he didn't expect to hear this sentence. "I think I've fallen in love with Yunjian." Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 27-25. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. In the past, when Yunjian treated Yi Ji well, Yi Ji only hid in a corner and secretly rejoiced. Seeing this, Yuan Xing felt extremely displeased in his heart. Seeing Yi Ji hiding in a corner and secretly reminiscing about Yunjian, Yuan Xing was very unhappy. This time, Yi Ji was even more ruthless. Just when Yuan Xing thought that she would secretly tell him her little secret like before, she suddenly said this. Yuan Xing's face instantly turned darker than a frying pan. But that was not all. Yi Ji's next sentence was even more ruthless. "It's not that kind of like, it's. I feel like it's the kind of like a girl has for a guy." Yuan Xing's face only darkened, but in reality, his heart was very complicated. I don't know if it's that kind of like." Before Yuan Xing's face could finish darkening, Yi Ji suddenly covered her face and shook her head shyly. That face of a little girl who had a crush on someone and confided in someone she trusted looked very much like love. And Yuan Xing was not the one Yi Ji had a crush on, but the one Yi Ji confided in. His face could no longer be described as dark. "Anyway, I feel that Sister Yunjian is very, very handsome." "Oh right, Yuan Xing, do you know where Sister Yunjian went? Let's go find her together, I feel like I haven't seen her in a long time." Yi Ji gradually recovered from her crush. She was already holding Yuan Xing's hand and looking up at him. Although Yuan Xing would not help her when she was bullied in the past, he would unconditionally agree to go wherever she wanted to go. Yi Ji thought that Yuan Xing would agree immediately. Who knew that Yuan Xing would reach out and grab her little hand? He did not even care that the candied haws in her arms had fallen to the ground. He rejected her directly. "No." After that, Yuan Xing pulled Yi Ji and dragged her away. "Why not?" However, Yi Ji didn't ask this question. She forcefully swallowed the last question she wanted to ask. Over the next few days, Yuan Li brought Yi Ji to several cities and wandered to many places. Yi Ji had been sulking the whole time. She only ate a few mouthfuls of food and curled up in the corner of the bed when she slept. Her expression was dull and lifeless. She didn't even bother to look at her favorite candied hawthorn. People who had family in their hearts, no matter how far away they were from home, no matter how much they wanted to leave home in their childhood, once they left, they would want to fly back to their parents' side. Yi Ji was just like that. In less than 2 months, Yuan Xing could not bear to send Yi Ji back to Longmen City. Yi Ji happily returned home and went back to school. At first, Yuan Xing really left alone. Later on, Yuan Xing would think of Yi Ji every night, so he decided to stay by her side. Yi Ji, who had returned to school, was very afraid of her classmates. It was a kind of fear that came from the depths of the soul. A puppet that shouldn't exist in this world couldn't control when facing a human. But it was different from the past. Yi Ji worked very hard in school to make herself brave. Just like what Yun Jian had said, she was a human, a version of herself with a physical body. In spite of that, bullying of the weak still happened in school. There was once when Yi Ji covered her ears and was dragged to the corner of the school by 5 to 6 girls. Yi Ji squatted in the corner, not daring to lift her head. Just as the 5 or 6 girls were about to beat Yi Ji up, a sudden gust of wind blew in all directions. In that gust of wind, there were also countless small stones, all of which smashed onto the bodies of the 5 or 6 girls, frightening them to the point that they did not dare to make a move against Yi Ji. Since then, whenever anyone dared to bully Yi Ji in school, a supernatural phenomenon would occur. This surprised Yi Ji, but she did not think much of it. In fact, it was all done by Yuan Xing, who had been hiding in the corner and observing her every move. Risking being caught by Yun Jian, Yuan Xing thought he was crazy. He did not even bat an eyelid when anyone bullied Yi Ji in the past. Now, he wished he could skin whoever dared to bully Yi Ji. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 27-26. The matter of Yuan Xing secretly protecting Yi Ji had always been very covert and had never been discovered by anyone. Until, one day, Yun Jian came to school to find Yi Ji and slapped her in public. Yuan Xing knew that Yun Jian did this to lure him out. But he couldn't help but stand up. After Yun Jian left, Yuan Xing still pretended that he never cared about Yi Ji. In fact, he was still secretly protecting her. Until the war came and they won the war. Everything was over. The mysterious man was also completely destroyed. Yuan Xing and Xing Feng, who came from the future, also bid farewell to everyone in the forest of time and space. Yuan Xing thought that he could go back to the year 2004 from 2019 to find Yi Ji through the time and space portal. But who would have thought that the time and space portal would not open after 20 minutes? Yuan Xing was anxious, so he grabbed Yi Ji's hand and said to her, "Come with me." Then, afraid that Yi Ji would not agree, Yuan Xing added, "I'll marry you." The moment Yi Ji agreed, what outsiders didn't know was that Yuan Xing heaved a sigh of relief. He grabbed Yi Ji's hand and led her into the time and space portal with joy. What Yun Jian and the others didn't know was that Yi Ji, who had agreed to go with Yuan Xing, suddenly wanted to go back on her words the moment she stepped into the time and space portal. Yuan Xing, I think I'd better." She was still a little scared, even though she would still meet her parents, Yun Jian, and the others after arriving there. But they were all from the future. She had been absent from their lives for so many years. What if they didn't like her anymore? What if they didn't remember her? What if, you've already come this far? Do you think you still have room to go back on your words? Yuan Xing laughed heartily. He waved his hand and led Yi Ji into the time and space portal. Xing Feng snickered a couple of times behind him. Then, he coughed dryly for a moment before following closely behind. Yi Ji had just arrived in the year 2019 and came to the future world. There were many things she couldn't adapt to. At first, she was scared. However, she found that after more than 10 years, Yun Jian, Qin Yiru, and Yuni did not forget her. Moreover, her sister Yun Jian looked exactly the same as she did in 2004, more than 10 years ago. She was still youthful and beautiful, and her appearance had not aged at all. This made Yeji feel very close to him. The next day, Yuan Xing went to Qin Yiru's house to propose marriage to Yeji, intending to complete the marriage process. The night before the wedding, in Yeji's boudoir, Yeji was still clutching her fluttering heart. She could not believe that she was actually going to marry Yuan Xing. Moreover, she wanted to cry but had no tears. Originally, she liked cool girls like Yun Jian. Why did she suddenly agree to marry Yuan Xing? Yeji covered her face out of habit and blushed. Can I refuse him? Yeji thought for a long time in her little head. In the end, she looked at herself in the mirror and shook her head twice. She pouted and asked herself in the mirror. No. She was just talking to herself, but suddenly, she got a reply. Yeji looked in the direction of the voice in shock. She saw Yuan Xing walking toward her. You. When did you come in? Yeji was shocked. I'm here to check on my bride in advance. Yuan Xing smiled wickedly. He took 3 steps forward and grabbed Yeji's hand, pressing her down on the makeup table. Don't tear my clothes. Yuan Xing. If you do this again, I'll get angry. I'm really angry. Don't. What's this feeling? Don't. It's so embarrassing. Don't touch there, that's so dirty. Don't lick it. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 27-27. The little girl Si Yuan, the little guy Si Luo, and Zhou Yiran grew up together. Because the 3 of them were born early and were about the same age. When the 4 leaders of the Inhun organization, except for Adam, were born, the little girl, the little guy, and Zhou Yiran were already free to do whatever they wanted. Perhaps it was because Yun Jian had been to the future world and saw Si Yuan being bullied, so Si Yuan was asked by Yun Jian to train together since she was young. Although she didn't ask too much, she suffered a lot. Zhou Yiran and the little guy Si Luo were thrown into the Amazon forest by Ce. They were accompanied by venomous snakes and fierce beasts day and night. Although the 3 of them grew up together, Zhou Yiran and Si Luo obviously spent more time together than Si Yuan. The 3 of them did grow up together, but after the age of 7, Si Yuan could only see Zhou Yiran and her brother Si Luo for 3 months in a year. This was naturally because Zhou Yiran and Si Luo were thrown into the Amazon forest for the rest of the 9 months. When Si Yuan was 14, she was already as curvy as Yun Jian. Because she defeated the mysterious man and changed the future history, Si Yuan had always been under the protection of her parents. This year, Si Yuan, who had just finished junior high school, went home with a small school bag. She hadn't seen Zhou Yiran and Si Luo for 5 months. She walked out of the school gate with 2 ponytails swaying. As soon as she walked out of the school gate, she saw her brother Si Luo and Zhou Yiran. Si Luo's appearance was very similar to Si Yi's. There was a trace of elegance in his handsomeness that made everything in the world lose their color. But compared to Si Yi, Si Luo's appearance was a bit wilder. The 14-year-old Si Luo was already 1.75 meters tall. Zhou Yiran, who was 3 or 4 years older than Si Yuan and Si Luo, was already 1.82 meters tall. Both of them were extraordinarily handsome. Just by standing there, they could attract the admiration of countless women. When Si Yuan walked out of the school gate, she was still holding a pink envelope in her hand. When she saw the 2 of them, she hid the envelope behind her back and ran over. Brother Yiran. Si Yuan called out sweetly. Yo, what did our little Si Yuan hide? Si Luo suddenly took the envelope from behind Si Yuan with a smirk. Brother! Return it to me, return it to me. Si Yuan blushed when Si Lan snatched the envelope away. She used the method that Yun Jian had taught her to snatch the envelope away from Si Lan. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand this self-defense technique, but it was nothing to C1. Dan turned sideways and opened the envelope. With a smirk, he read out the words on the envelope: Student Zhu Ziho, your handsome silhouette has already reflected my heart. I adore you. Ever since you, that whatever, started cleaning up for me, I've adored you. Can I ask you to date me, ha ha ha. Siyuan, you even have a crush on someone and write a love letter. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Sly laughed as he held the letter high in the air. Give it back to me. Give it back to me. Siyuan was furious. When Zhou Yiran heard that Siyuan had given a love letter to the boy beside her, his eyes flickered. Taking advantage of his height, he snatched the envelope from Siyuan's hands and tore the love letter in front of Siyuan and Siyuan. Then, Zhou Yiran sneered. A pile of scrap paper, heh. Siyuan and Siyuan. It had been 2 weeks since Siyuan and Zhou Yiran returned. On this day, Zhou Yiran had just woken up and was about to go for his morning exercise. When he passed by Siyuan's room, he was suddenly attracted by Siyuan, who was hiding behind the door with only one eye exposed. Brother Yiran, can you come over for a moment? Siyuan looked at Zhou Yiran with a dying gaze. Zhou Yiran walked over. However, he saw Siyuan stretching out her bloody hands from behind. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She said to Zhou Yiran with a frightened expression, Brother Yiran, I'm about to die. Big brother Yiran, I think I'm about to die. What should I do? My thigh has been bleeding since I woke up this morning. I couldn't find a wound even after searching for a long time. Can you help me take a look? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 27-28. Siyuan was curled up in her room, only half of her body sticking out. She frowned, her little face red and flustered. She had been bleeding for an hour. If she continued to bleed, she would die soon. Seeing that Zhou Yiran, who was standing in front of her, was stunned after hearing her words and was not in a hurry to reply to her, Siyuan lowered her little face. Her face was already pale from fright. Forget it, big brother Yiran, you don't have to look anymore. I must have contracted some incurable disease. Help me call big brother, mommy, and daddy over. Before I die. I want to tell them personally that I love them. As Siyuan spoke, her tears were about to fall. This scene made Zhou Yiran's heart soften. In the next second, Zhou Yiran stepped forward and reached out to touch Siyuan's head. Unlike his usual indifference in front of Siyuan, he smiled and rubbed Siyuan's head. Silly girl, you won't die. When Yunjian was alone in Siyuan's room, she explained the reason for the bleeding before changing Siyuan's bread. Siyuan was curled up in her bedroom blanket, burying her head and body in the blanket. After hearing Yunjian explain the reason for the bleeding, Siyuan was so embarrassed that she buried her head in the blanket and couldn't raise it. She actually asked Zhou Yiran to check her wound just now. It was such a hidden place. If she really let Zhou Yiran check it for her, he must think that I'm stupid. So embarrassing, so embarrassing. I don't want to see Zhou Yiran anymore. That guy is so annoying, 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 annoying. Siyuan used her cold little hands to hold her cheeks. She curled up in the blanket and tossed and turned, embarrassed and embarrassed. These words, Siyuan directly ridiculed. Because basically no one would enter her room. But who knew that just as she said this, the blanket that Siyuan was covering was lifted. Siyuan was suddenly stunned. When she reacted, she saw Zhou Yiran's handsome face. Why does Siyuan hate me? Zhou Yiran looked at Siyuan with an evil smile and repeated Siyuan's words. Ah, big brother Yiran, why are you here? The person Siyuan didn't want to see the most right now was Zhou Yiran. She covered herself with the blanket and desperately shrank into the corner. "Drink this." Zhou Yiran stopped joking with Si Yuan and handed her a bowl of brown sugar water. When Si Yuan saw this, she forced herself to forget the awkwardness and shame she felt just now. She took the brown sugar water from Zhou Yiran's hand and carefully put it to her lips, gently sipping it. When Zhou Yiran placed his hand in front of her abdomen without warning, Si Yuan was suddenly startled. She shrunk her stomach and moved her body back by 2 inches. "Does it hurt?" Zhou Yiran gently rubbed Si Yuan's stomach and asked softly. Si Yuan looked at Zhou Yiran blankly and shook her head. At this moment, Si Yuan's phone rang. Hearing the ringtone, Si Yuan suddenly reacted. She picked up the phone and answered the call. After receiving the call, Si Yuan's embarrassment and shyness when she was facing Zhou Yiran just now completely disappeared. Her eyebrows revealed joy again. She used the expression of a girl who adored a boy and shouted to the boy on the phone in front of Zhou Yiran, "Hello, is this Senior Zhu Ziho? I'm at home now. Is it a classmate gathering? Is it organized by Senior Zhu Ziho? Go, of course I have time. And I also have something that I want to give to Senior Zhu Ziho alone. Calm. Wonderful book house." Chapter 27-29. If it was said that when Si Yuan was talking to Zhou Yiran just now, she had an extremely embarrassed look on her face. At this moment, Si Yuan's expression was bashful, as if she was afraid that she would say something wrong and provoke the other seniors' dissatisfaction. Si Yuan had never shown such a girly expression in front of him before. "Senior Zhu Ziho?" Zhou Yiran's face gradually darkened under Si Yuan's unconscious state. He remembered that this was the person who asked his Yuan to write a love letter to. He had only left for 9 months. She already had someone else she liked so quickly. Si Yuan was still speaking shyly to the senior on the other end of the phone. At this moment, Zhou Yiran snatched the phone that Si Yuan was still talking to. His face was indifferent the entire time. He used an indifferent tone to speak to the senior who was still talking to Si Yuan. "Is this Yuan's senior? Your call seriously affected my fun with Yuan. In the future, don't call Yuan when I'm in bed with Yuan." Zhou Yiran said this string of lies without blushing or skipping a beat. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Yiran hung up the phone without even giving the other senior time to reply. He blacklisted the other senior's number with one hand and threw Si Yuan's phone on the dressing table in the distance. Si Yuan took a long time to react. She was stunned. When she realized what Zhou Yiran had said and done, her face instantly turned pale. She looked at Zhou Yiran and called out his name. "Zhou Yiran, what are you doing? You're unreasonable. I don't want to see you anymore. Get out of my room. Immediately." Si Yuan was so angry that her eyes were wet. She pointed at the door and said angrily to Zhou Yiran. "Have you forgotten, Yuan? You accepted my flowers when you were young and agreed to be my bride." Zhou Yiran smiled wickedly and walked toward Si Yuan. Zhou Yiran's wickedness combined with his handsome features gave people a terrifying feeling no matter how they looked at it. Si Yuan grabbed the blanket and pursed her lips. After hearing Zhou Yiran's words, she turned her head to the side and acted shamelessly. Did I say that?" Just as Si Yuan finished speaking, Zhou Yiran suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Si Yuan's chin. He leaned forward, grabbed her red lips, and pressed his lips against hers. The moment she was suddenly kissed, Si Yuan had an indescribable feeling. She had always treated Zhou Yiran as her brother, just like brother Si Ruo. But he actually, and she seemed to, like this feeling. What's wrong with her? Silly girl, you don't even know how to close your eyes. Zhou Yiran saw that Si Yuan was almost suffocated by his kiss. He smiled and let go of her. With his hands in his pockets, Zhou Yiran stared fixedly at Si Yuan. Finally, a meaningful arc appeared on his face. Silly girl, you can't run away. I have to marry you. As for Senior Zhu Ziho, if one came, he would kill one. If two came, he would kill two. His Yuan could only be his. Big brother Iran, don't show that kind of expression. I'm scared. Si Yuan looked at Zhou Iran's devilishly charming expression, as though he was holding her in his hands. She shivered. The next second, she was pulled into Zhou Iran's embrace. Don't be afraid. There's something that will make you even more afraid in the future. That thing will make you pregnant and make you his woman forever, his little Yuan. Already, I can't wait to make you my woman. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2730. In another time and space. After Yun Jian and Ce died together with the mysterious man, Shuang, Lin Wei, Adam, Mo Sen, and the others all died in that battle. Just 3 years after the war, in early 2019. Si Dan, Zhou Iran, and Yuan Jin were drinking in a bar. At that time, Yuan Jin was not called Yuan Jin. Yuan Jin did not have a real name. His parents always called him Lingling. Later, in the battle in 2016, Shuang and Si Luo died. Yuan Jin gave himself a name, Yuan Jin. The three of them got drunk in the bar. When they left the bar, they suddenly saw a black shadow. Originally, this was not a strange thing. However, the black shadow was dressed exactly the same as the mysterious man. The year 2019 was 3 years since the mysterious man had perished together with Yun Jian and the others. The mysterious man had died long ago. How could he still be alive? Therefore, the three of them followed him. Although they lost the mysterious man, they found the space-time gate in the space-time forest. Now, no matter how stupid they were, they could guess that the mysterious man was from the future world. In that case, their parents could still be saved. Are you sure? If we go back to the past to change history and fail, even we will die, not to mention Yuan Jin said to Si Dan. This discovery might be able to change history, but they only had one chance. If they failed, not only would they not be able to save the people they lost, but they might even die. It's been 3 years. Are you happy? Si Dan only said this sentence. After that, the three of them fell silent. Zhou Iran, I leave Yuan to you. Yuan Jin and I will go back. If we die, you must protect Yuan. Otherwise, I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Si Dan said seriously to Zhou Iran. This year, Si Dan, Zhou Iran, and Yuan Jin were all in their 20s. I promise with my life. Zhou Iran said firmly. After making the decision, Si Dan and Yuan Jin walked into the space-time gate. The two of them could not bear the impact of the gate. Fortunately, they still had the spiritual power taught by Yun Jian and Ce, so they did not die. However, when they exited the space-time gate, Si Dan and Yuan Xing were separated. Si Shan was directly smashed out of the space-time gate, falling from a height of 1,000 meters and landing in an unknown place on an unknown continent. Unable to withstand the strong impact, he finally closed his eyes and fainted. It was unknown how long he had been unconscious for. There seemed to be a female singing voice in his mind. The voice was like the chirping of an oriole, giving people a fresh and refined feeling. The voice was very pleasant to listen to. It was a 16 or 17-year-old girl who was passing by. When the young girl saw Si Ming lying in the stream, she was so scared that she hurried over and wanted to help Si Ming up. What happened to you? Are you okay? But Sven had already fainted. The young girl gritted her teeth and finally went to call for help. When Si Wen woke up, he saw the girl trying to wipe the sweat off his body. He struggled to get up, but he felt as if his entire body had been crushed by a tire. The pain was unbearable. "Don't get up, you're covered in wounds from head to toe, you'll split open. Hurry up and lie down." The young girl quickly put down the towel that she had used to wipe his body and helped him lie down. Seeing this, Xiaofan's deep eyes glanced at the girl. He asked, "You are?" "My name is Kai Tang, I'm from this village. When I saw you lying on the ground, I was worried that something would happen to you, so I brought you back in a hurry. Just now, I've already asked an immortal cultivator with medical skills to treat your injuries. He said that you'll recover after a day of rest. Lie down and don't move, I'll change the water for you and wipe your body. This will heal you faster." The young girl was very delicate, and her big eyes seemed to be able to speak. She looked at Dan, and after saying this, she stood up and smiled at him. Then, she walked out with a slightly shy face. If you want to talk about campus rebirth, the strongest female secret agent, with more like-minded people, follow excellent reading literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a confidant. Chapter 2731. Kai Tang was the kind of girl who looked like a child. She was very young, only 17 years old, but she had the face of a 15 or 16-year-old girl. That pair of black eyes was like a talking parrot, giving people a feeling that she was full of vigor and vitality. After Kai Tang left the house with the wooden basin, Si Luo began to look around. This was a very old house, similar to a wooden house in ancient times, as if it could collapse at any time. The house was very simple. Other than a bed, a stool, and some girls' daily necessities, there was nothing else. But Si Luo smiled. From the moment he woke up, Si Luo knew that he had succeeded. He had succeeded in coming from the year 2019 to the millions of continents where everything had yet to begin. "Are you hungry? I've cooked some porridge for you." Just then, Kai Tang, who had just left with the wooden basin, came back with a bowl of porridge. She looked at Si Luo and smiled sweetly. Si Luo replied softly. Kai Tang then brought the porridge to Si Luo. "Oh right, do you have a name?" Kai Tang helped Si Luo up from the bed and suddenly had an idea, so she asked suddenly. Si Luo's eyes darkened at the question. "Well, if you don't want to say it, then forget it." Kai Tang saw that Si Luo did not reply for a long time, so she bit her tongue. Xingfeng. Just when Kai Tang thought that he would not speak, Si Luo suddenly spoke. "Nice name." Kai Tang smiled at Si Luo, then stood up and walked out. "Then you eat the porridge first, I'll go out for a while." He had been here for a month, and Kai Tang had been taking care of him. Si Luo's body had almost recovered. During this time, Si Luo finally understood that he was in a place called the Desolate Spirit Continent among the millions of continents. The Desolate Spirit Continent was among the millions of continents, just like the Yulong continent that did not have the sorcerer god. It was the lowest continent among the millions of continents. It was a place so low that women were defiled by people from other continents, but they did not dare to voice their anger. Si Luo did not forget his business. While he was recuperating, he asked Kai Tang to help him find Yuan Jin's whereabouts, but it was to no avail. So he decided to leave. "You're leaving early tomorrow morning?" The village chief of Kai Tang's village was very surprised to hear that Si Wen was leaving. "Yes, thank you for your help these days. I will definitely visit you to express my gratitude." Si Dan cupped his hands towards Kai Tang, the villagers who had helped him, and the village chief. The village head didn't respond to Si Xian, but he gave Kai Tang a look. What the village chief and Kai Tang didn't know was that the look he gave Kai Tang had already fallen into Si Wan's eyes. At night, Si Ming was sleeping on the bed. The paper covering the window was suddenly pierced by someone. Si Dan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move from the bed. After a while, a cloud of sleeping gas was blown into the room. The amount of smoke was enough to knock out a powerful cultivator. Sven did not move and pretended to be knocked out. Yunjian and Ce had fed C1 all kinds of poisons and drugs since he was young, so he was immune to all kinds of poisons. After a long time, the sound of crying suddenly came from outside the house. Sven gently turned over and quietly approached the door. In the end, he just leaned against the door and listened to the sound coming from outside. From the sound of it, it was the village chief's voice. And the target of the village chief's scolding was none other than Kai Tang. Nonsense. You'll be 18 in a month. If you're not married when you're 18, you'll definitely be taken to the Flame Barren Land. Do you know what kind of place the Flame Barren Land is? All the prisoners from thousands of continents are imprisoned there. There are more than 10,000 people there. The young girls thrown there can be raped by the 10,000 prisoners in the Flame Barren Land at any time. Do you think you can handle so many men in the Flame Barren Land where women are rare? Not to mention 10,000, even 100 of them will take your life. That sleeping gas still has some aphrodisiac in it. As long as you immediately go in and do the deed with that man, you don't have to be afraid that he won't marry you. Do it with one person, or be touched by 10,000 men at any time. It's up to you. M. Chapter 2732. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Kai Tang exclaimed, "Why are you here?" Page 1/1. Although the village chief's words were sharp, they were also heavy. The village chief did not want Kai Tang to do such a thing. Kai Tang was just an ordinary village girl. However, she did not have a choice in this matter. After criticizing Kai Tang with a harsh tone, the village chief regretted it immediately. Sigh. The village head sighed heavily. He looked at Kai Tang, who had already burst into tears in front of him, and pressed his forehead. The Desolate Spirit Continent was the lowest level continent among the thousands of continents. It was so low that the experts from other continents could slander it as they wished. In this world where strength was respected, regardless of gender, as long as one had strength, anyone could be a king. Because this village in the Desolate Spirit Continent was small and weak, there was an unwritten rule since the beginning of the continent. Any girl in this village who was still a virgin at the age of 18 would be captured and sent to a place where prisoners from thousands of continents were locked up, the Land of Flame. They would become the playthings of tens of thousands of men in the Land of Flame. To put it bluntly, they were like military prostitutes. However, in this village, because there had never been an expert who could protect the village, such an unfair and ridiculous rule was forced to be set since the beginning of the continent. Kai Tang was about to turn 18. She had to find a man, get married, and lose her virginity before she turned 18. Suddenly, the manager of the Land of Flame would send an old woman to check if Kai Tang was still a virgin at the age of 18 and if she was already married. Because of such a system, the people in this village were not willing to have daughters. Even if they had daughters, some would use their connections to send them far away. The men in this village were too weak. In this world where the strong were respected, they were often killed because they could not defeat the other party. Therefore, in Kai Tang's village, there were almost no men of Kai Tang's age. Even if there were, they would have already married. At first, it was a coincidence that Kai Tang saved Si Rui. However, it was less than a month before Kai Tang turned 18. If they still could not find her, Kai Tang would really be sent to the Land of Flame. The village chief had no choice but to do this. "Village chief, I really can't, please let him go, I will think of a way, I will definitely think of a way when the time comes." Standing in front of the village chief, Kai Tang's small face revealed endless pain. She pleaded with the village chief, her face pale. "Ah, forget it, forget it. Little girl Kai Tang, don't regret it." The village chief sighed fiercely, flicked his sleeves, and turned to leave. Under the moonlight, through the paper window, Si Wan saw Kai Tang wiping away her tears, patting her pink and tender cheeks, grabbing the flesh around her mouth, forcing a smile, and then turning around and running away. Si Ming stood inside the cabin and looked around. A few seconds later, he left the cabin and followed Kai Tang's footsteps without being discovered. She saw Kai Tang come to the side of a stream. She squatted down, and the forced smile just now disappeared. Her tears suddenly gushed out like water. She squatted down and cried loudly. It was very quiet here, and there was no one around. Si Ming was about to leave. Who knew that Kai Tang suddenly tripped on a stone and fell into the stream? Si Rui instinctively appeared and stretched out a hand to wrap around Kai Tang's slender waist. The sudden appearance of Si Rui scared Kai Tang. She looked at Si Rui in panic and exclaimed, "Xiaofan, why are you here?" Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2733. I followed you here. Si Lan just looked down at Kai Tang and said. He didn't have so many things to do. He didn't have so many things to do. He came here for an important mission. A person like him might not even have a future. He would definitely leave this place. After saying this, Si Lan let go of Kai Tang, turned around and walked back. Do you know everything? Kai Tang was not stupid. The moment Si Dan took 2 steps back, she asked. After asking this question, Kai Tang smiled again. She wiped away her tears and solemnly said to Si Wan, who was walking forward without looking back at her. Don't worry, I won't let you get involved in this matter in our village. When you leave tomorrow, leave from the east gate of the village. Remember, don't say goodbye, and don't look for the village chief or the villagers. Otherwise, they won't let you go. The people in Kai Tang's village were basically very united. Kai Tang was about to turn 18. Originally, the people in the village were still struggling to find a man to marry Kai Tang. Now that Si Lan sent himself to the door, the people in the village naturally wouldn't let Si Lan leave easily. Even if the village chief didn't care about this matter, the villagers definitely wouldn't let Si Lan leave empty-handed like when he came. Kai Tang's words were equivalent to letting Si Lan go directly. Si Lan, who was walking in front, stopped in his tracks, but he didn't say anything and walked forward again. The next morning, Si Lan's house was empty. Kai Tang knew that he must have taken advantage of the fact that the sky was still dark to leave. Although he was a little disappointed in his heart, this was also a reasonable thing. After tidying up the house where Si Lan slept, Kai Tang just walked out of the door and the house was surrounded by the villagers in the village. Kai Tang, tell uncle, where did that kid go? You saved this person. What's wrong with marrying you to repay your kindness? Come out quickly. A group of villagers gathered here. If Si Lan was still here, he would definitely be blocked and couldn't get out. Kai Tang breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was gone. He's gone. I let him go. I know uncles and aunts are doing this for my good. I'm really touched, but we can't force him like this. We have no right to ask anyone to repay our kindness. Kai Tang bowed deeply to the crowd in front of her. This group of uncles and aunts who had gathered here for Kai Tang all secretly wiped away their tears. How could such a well-behaved child be born in their village? And they were forced to endure all of this. Kai Tang. At this moment, the village chief appeared. After the village chief appeared, he first sighed and then said to Kai Tang, Zhang Lu from the neighboring village is a good man with great strength. Although you will be his 17th concubine after marrying him, but, just as the village chief finished speaking, the villagers suddenly saw a handsome man walking out from behind the wooden house and cried out in alarm. Si Xian. This brat didn't leave. Just when everyone was surprised that Si Jin had actually returned, Kai Tang also couldn't believe that Si Jin was carrying a living thing in front of everyone. Si Dan suddenly threw the living creature in his hand, a small demon beast that was very valuable in the Xiuxian continent, in front of everyone. The villagers had never seen such a magical beast before. One must know that in the village, no one had the ability to capture such a small demon beast. At the moment when everyone was looking at this small demon beast in surprise, Xian suddenly spoke in front of everyone present. "I've just arrived here and have no money. This is the betrothal gift. You can arrange the marriage at any time. Chapter 2734. He really came back. Kai Tang was stunned. Her little face was full of shock and disbelief. "Didn't you already leave?" Kai Tang looked at Si Ro in surprise and asked, "Didn't you already leave?" While the people around were looking at the little magical beast in surprise, Kai Tang looked at Si Ro with a trace of emotion and asked, "Who said that?" Si Ming raised his eyebrows and looked at Kai Tang. After that, Si Luo kicked the little magical beast that was curled up on the ground. It was originally fierce and brutal, but now it was as obedient as a mouse in front of Si Luo. He looked at Kai Tang and said, "I just went to catch this beast." Si Luo's words touched Kai Tang's heart. "Ha ha ha. Young man, you can actually defeat a magical beast." The village chief walked to the little magical beast, looked at it, and stared at Si Luo with a stunned expression. While laughing, the village head lost his smile. He suddenly wiped away his tears and bowed deeply to Si Dan. "Young man, I apologize for what I did to you before. Kai Tang has no parents since she was a child. I brought her up single-handedly. Now I give her to you. I hope you can treat her well. She is a good child. Please." The village chief's action made Kai Tang burst into tears instantly. "I will." The village chief's words were in return for Si Luo's affirmation. Since he planned to marry her, he naturally would not let her down. Because Kai Tang's 18th birthday was coming, the village hurriedly held a wedding for Kai Tang and Si Luo the next night. Although it was very simple, and even to Si Wan, who had seen a lot of things in 2019, it was a wedding banquet that he didn't even care about. However, he felt particularly warm. Yun Jian and Ce died together in the battle with the mysterious man in 2016. Si Luo had suffered too much in the past 3 years. Today, in such a small village, he felt warmth again. This was also the reason why Si Luo was willing to marry Kai Tang. The wedding was held very late. The villagers in the village were very noisy. They stopped at midnight and went home. Si Luo walked into the wedding room. Kai Tang was still sitting on the bed at this time. But from Kai Tang's action of clenching the handkerchief in her hand, it could be seen how scared Kai Tang was at this moment and what would happen next. In fact, Si Luo had never done anything between a man and a woman. But in this regard, men were born beasts. When Si Dan walked in front of Kai Tang sat on the side, feeling a little uncomfortable. In the end, Kai Tang and Si Luan had only known each other for a little more than a month. He was still considered a stranger. But now, she was going to marry a man who was still considered a stranger, and she didn't even know where he came from, and do the most intimate thing. There was still an unspeakable panic and fear in Kai Tang's heart. When Si Dan reached out to pull off Kai Tang's clothes, Kai Tang clutched her clothes tightly. Her small cheeks were red as if she had eaten chili. It was tempting. "Don't, can I not take off my clothes? I'm scared." Kai Tang stammered out the last 3 words in a voice that sounded like the chirping of a mosquito. "Okay." Sven didn't force her. He took the initiative and reached out to pull Kai Tang's pants. At first, Kai Tang clamped her pants tightly, refusing to let Sven take them off. It was instinctive. Finally, Kai Tang, whose pants were torn off, hid her face in the quilt, not daring to look at Si Tua. For some reason, when he saw Kai Tang's frightened appearance, it reminded him of Zhou Ran. That abominable and hateful man. Thinking of this, Si Dan had already grabbed Kai Tang's slender waist and fiercely entered. Ah! It hurts. Chapter 27:35. The night was very quiet. The chirping of cicadas and the chirping of insects mixed together, adding some color to the moonlit night. Inside the wooden house, there was a charming moment. At night, the stars were densely packed. When the world inside the wooden house quieted down, the two twinkling stars in the sky collided with each other, emitting a twinkling light. Kai Tang, who was in Si Dan's arms, was still unable to react. She was actually married and had become a real woman. The silence lasted for a long time, so long that Kai Tang thought Si Dan had fallen asleep. She felt that her body was sticky. Perhaps it was because the two of them had just done something indescribable not too long ago. Moving her body, Kai Tang wanted to quietly pull away Si Wen's hand that was wrapped around her slender waist and sneak out to take a shower. Suddenly, she heard a male voice above her head. Sleep. Kai Tang's breath tightened. She thought he had fallen asleep. After secretly heaving a sigh of relief, Kai Tang gently turned her body and fell asleep. The next morning, Kai Tang had just gotten up when she saw Si Dan sitting at the end of the bed. When she thought of what happened last night, she blushed shyly. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard Si Ming sitting at the end of the bed speak. You're safe in the village. Live well in the future. After saying that, he stood up. If one day I can come back safely, I'll take you away. Si Dan's face was still indifferent. He did have some feelings for Kai Tang. After all, the two of them had only known each other for about a month. But feelings could be cultivated. But he couldn't take her away now. He still had a heavy responsibility. He didn't dare to forget for a moment the purpose of coming here. You're leaving. Kai Tang heard Si Dan's words and stood up straight, her beautiful eyes wide open. If you're leaving, can you take me with you? Kai Tang didn't wait for Si Dan to speak and asked. No. Si Ming frowned and decisively refused. Why? I can wash clothes for you. I can be very obedient. Don't abandon me, okay? Kai Tang thought Si Dan was going to leave, so she blinked and was a little scared. I won't abandon you. Xiaofan, will never let you down. But if you go with me, you might lose your life at any time. You might live in fear every day, or you might never return to the village. That's why I can't take you away. Sven said to Kai Tang in a solemn tone. He thought that Kai Tang would be scared after hearing these words. I'm not afraid. Kai Tang's big eyes flashed with a confident light. She very calmly blurted out these words. Kai Tang was afraid that Xing Feng wouldn't believe her, so she continued. I'm already married to you, so I'm yours. Indeed, I don't know about your past, but I'm willing to understand you. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of death. Even if there's any danger, I'll go through it with you. The girl's words were filled with an irresistible firmness. Si Xian's heart skipped a beat. It had to be said that Kai Tang's words just now had moved Si Wan's heart. But he still replied, but I'm scared. After saying this, Si Ming moved closer to Kai Tang. He lowered his head and looked at Kai Tang. After 2 seconds of silence, he suddenly said, I'm afraid that you'll die because of me. I don't want to see any more sacrifices. Do you understand? Be good and wait here for me to come back. I swear to you, I'll definitely come back. You'll be my wife for life, the one and only. Chapter 27:36. Kai Tang was not a difficult person to deal with. After hearing Si Dan's words, she was silent for 2 seconds. Suddenly, she nodded. Yes. Then I'll wait for you to come back. It was such a simple sentence, but it became Si Dan's burden. In the end, Si Wan left on his own. However, now that he had someone to care about in this little village, and had run into Yuan Jin, he cherished his life even more than before. In this era, the thousands of continents were still in conflict with no master. The domination of the gods' continent had yet to begin. Si Dan brought Yuan Xing and killed his way into the gods' continent. He killed many strong people and fought for supremacy. 3 years later, the first ruler of the gods' continent was born. And this first ruler was none other than Si Dan. If not for Yuan Xing's help and his concern for Kai Tang, Si Dan would not have been able to hold on many times. However, he managed to hold on in the end. On this day, 3 years later, Si Dan had a stable force in the gods' continent. He also built the temple of the gods' continent. The gods' continent had been a place that the cultivators of the thousands of continents revered and looked up to since ancient times. From then on, the gods' continent was the goal that the cultivators of the thousands of continents fought for. However, later on, the gods' continent encountered a great disaster and completely disappeared from the thousands of continents. Later on, the gods' continent became a mythical place among the thousands of continents. No one knew if it really existed. It was just like how the people of Country Z thought that gods were just mythical characters. In the village. This is the place. Yuan Xing stood behind Xing Feng and asked Si Dan. Yes. Si Dan nodded. After a pause, he walked forward and said to Yuan Xing, "Let's go." When Yuan Xing first heard that Si Dan had married a wife when he first came here, he was shocked. However, Yuan Xing never showed his emotions on his face. In this era, Yuan Xing did not wear a ghost mask. The two handsome men walked in the village and attracted the attention of many villagers. After leaving for 3 years, Si Dan became more mature. Hence, most of the villagers did not recognize him at first sight. When they arrived at the village, they saw the usual wooden house. Si Dan walked in. Si Dan and Yuan Xing looked left and right for a while but did not find any trace of anyone. Si Dan's eyebrows slightly sank. Mother, I already know how to recite it. The 111th law of the desolate spirit continent, residents must abide by the law. If you want to learn spiritual power, you must. Suddenly, a child's voice came from the door. The voice was catchy, and the words carried a childish tone. When he first heard the child's voice, Si Dan's expression changed slightly. Yuan Xing also moved his eyes and followed Si Dan out of the room. When Si Shi came out of the house and saw Kai Tang, who he hadn't seen for 3 years, still full of youthful charm, walking in with a 3-year-old child from outside the courtyard, he was stunned. Kai Tang was holding the hand of a 3-year-old child who was reciting ancient poems. The moment she walked in from outside the courtyard and met Si Dan's eyes, she was also stunned. After not seeing her for 2 years, Kai Tang had become more mature and feminine. Without the innocence of a young girl, although Kai Tang was dressed plainly, it could not cover her beautiful and attractive figure and beautiful delicate face. What attracted Si Dan's attention the most was the 3-year-old child who raised his big eyes and stopped reciting the catchy poem. He glanced left and right and finally stared at Si Dan. As for the 3-year-old child who was being held by Kai Tang, he actually looked exactly like Si Wan. P.S. I don't have much inspiration, so I want to write less. In addition, tomorrow is the 9th, I want to take a day off, so I won't update for the time being. Because I have to take a bus home on the 9th, it should be very late when I get home. I'm afraid I'm not in a good mood, so I won't update. Sob, I'll update on the 10th. In addition, I will write about the male and female leads in May or June. After writing about these important supporting couples, other couples will be mentioned in addition to the male and female leads. If you have any suggestions, please add me on QQ and tell me. Q number 2625702229. M. Chapter 27:37. Mother, mother, there are two strange uncles standing in front of our house. Who are they? The little boy who was being held by Kai Tang blinked his big eyes, looked up at Kai Tang, and asked loudly. Kai Tang's eyes were wet from the question. She thought that after Si Tuan left, he would not come back. After Si Tuan left, even the villagers thought that he would not come back. When he married her, perhaps it was just a favor to repay her for saving his life. After Si Tuan left, the village chief advised Kai Tang that if she met a good man in the future, she should remarry. But Kai Tang was not willing. Who knew that after 2 months, Kai Tang would find out that she was pregnant? She had been waiting for him and had never thought of anything else. Mother, mother. Mother. Standing beside Kai Tang, the child whose height did not even reach Kai Tang's knees, but his little hand was raised high. He pulled the corner of Kai Tang's clothes and shook it, attracting Kai Tang's attention. Kai Tang, who had recovered from her memories, was startled. She reached out and grabbed the child's hand, watching Si Tuan and Yuan Xing walk over. You. Kai Tang wanted to say something. Strange uncle. The 3-year-old boy pulled Kai Tang's hand and stepped back. With a hateful expression, he looked at Si Dan and Yuan Xing who were walking towards them. Could this be your son? Yuan Xing was silent for 2 seconds and also reacted from his shock. His rarely shocked face showed a different color. But Si Tuan ignored Yuan Xing's shock and walked towards Kai Tang. Kai Tang did not step back. Instead, the 3-year-old boy pulled Kai Tang and stepped back. He looked at Si Tuan like a tiger watching its prey. Strange uncle, you are not allowed to bully my mother. As soon as he said this, Si Tuan picked him up like how Si lifted him in the air when he was a child. I am your father. Si Tuan picked up the 3-year-old boy and said word by word. After listening to Si Dan's words, the child suddenly burst into tears with a wah. Seeing this, Kai Tang was so scared that she took the child from Si Tuan. She pursed her lips and glanced at Si Tuan. After all, they hadn't seen each other for 3 years, so they were still somewhat unfamiliar with each other. Si Wen naturally felt Kai Tang's actions, and his eyes deepened. What's his name? Seeing Kai Tang protecting the child like a treasure in front of him, Si Wan's heart tightened. Kai Liang. Kai Tang carefully raised her head and glanced at Si Dan. She bit her lips and said. Not good. Si Wan suddenly interjected after Kai Tang's words. Just as he finished speaking, Si Bai added, from now on, he will be called Sizwa. N. Kai Tang listened to Si Wen's words and nodded, but she didn't go to Si Wen. Wah, strange uncle not only bullied mother but also changed Liang Liang's name, wah 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 wah. After hearing Si Shue's words, the 3-year-old began to cry like a porcelain doll again. Yuan Xing stood at the side and grinned. This child's personality was not at all like Si Rui or his maternal grandparents, Yun Jian and Si Yi. The child's cries were met with a headshot from Sven. Finally, the child bit his lips like a bullied little girl, daring to be angry but not daring to say anything. 10 minutes later, the child who changed his name to Sizwa was playing happily with Yuan Xing. Si Tuan took advantage of this gap to pull Kai Tang's hand and walked into the wooden house. As soon as they entered Kai Tang's house, Si Tuan embraced Kai Tang. At this time, Kai Tang hugged Si Tuan's neck. This action greatly stimulated Si Tuan. Si Tuan pressed Kai Tang's butt and lifted her onto the newly added desk in the house. Like a bandit robbing a civilian girl, he quickly took off Kai Tang's pants, bent Kai Tang's beautiful legs, and sank deep into Kai Tang's scream. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 27:38. Page 1/1, outside the house, it started drizzling. After a while, the raindrops became bigger and bigger, and the rain became heavier. Inside the house, after the two of them hugged each other, Kai Tang cried out in surprise. Si Ming maintained this posture and did not move. Kai Tang also used her small arms to hug Si Ming's sturdy chest. Tears flowed down her face without any gaps. They maintained this posture. I thought you wouldn't come back. Her face was full of tears. Silly, these 4 years, you've worked hard. I will never let go of your hand. Si Ming hugged Kai Tang's small body and let her bury her head in his chest. Just when the two of them were tightly connected, and everything was about to start. It's raining. Mother said we can't play in the rain, we'll catch a cold. Come, let's go play with Mother. At this time, Xiaoyang Liang's voice suddenly came from outside the house. Xiaoyang Liang was Si Ming and Kai Tang's child. Xiaoyang Liang's name was changed to Siswa by Si Ming. Kai Liang was the name given to Xiaoyang Liang by Kai Tang. Since his name was changed to Siswa, then Xiaoyang Liang became his nickname. Mother, open the door. I'll bring uncle to play with you. Xiaoyang Liang led Yuan Xian to the house where Kai Tang and Si Ming were and knocked on the door. At this time, Kai Tang and Si Ming were hugging each other, but they were hugging each other in a shy posture. At the same time, Kai Tang's face flushed bright red. She pushed Si Ming. At this moment, if Kai Tang became Yunjian and Si Ming became Ce, then even if the emperor came, Ce would still continue to do it. Although Si Ming's personality was very similar to Ce, they were not the same person. He withdrew from Kai Tang's body. The two of them tidied up their clothes. Kai Tang was afraid of being seen through, so she ran to the window and opened it. She used her cold hands to hold her cheeks and then went to open the door. The moment the door was opened, Xiaoyang Liang was like a happy cat as he pounced on Kai Tang. Mother, I was playing games with Uncle just now. Uncle is so smart and powerful. Little Yang Liang suddenly stopped talking. The next moment, Xiaoyang Liang saw Si Dan standing in his mother's room. Although little Yang Liang was only 3 years old, his cheeks changed color in an instant. The next second, little Yang Liang glared at Si Xian fiercely and grinned at him. Bad uncle. Bad uncle. Why are you in Nyangqin's room? The village head's great-grandfather said that no other man could enter except for father. Bad uncle. Xiaoyang Liang was still young and had not realized that he looked very similar to Si Ming. He also did not realize his relationship with Si Ming. Little Yang Liang glared at Si Dan fiercely while struggling to get out of Kai Tang's arms. Then, the little figure rushed in front of Si Dan and slapped Si Dan with one hand while pulling Si Dan's hand with the other, wanting to drag Si Dan out of the room. Little Yang Liang did not have the company of his father since he was young. Because of his desire, when he saw Si Dan in Kai Tang's house, he rushed over to beat him up. Only his father could enter his mother's room. All the men who wanted to enter his mother's room were bad guys. I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you to death. Bad uncle. Bad uncle. Little Yang Liang said while pulling Si Dan. He tugged at Si Dan's hand. As he tugged and tugged, something called tears flowed out of little Yang Liang's eyes. At this moment, Kai Tang was the first to react. She hurriedly walked over and pulled little Yang Liang's hand away from Si Dan. She carried little Yang Liang and said to little Yang Liang, "He's your father." "Liang Liang, didn't you always miss your father? He's your biological father." Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2739. Although Xiaoyang Liang was still a child, he was surprisingly intelligent. It was probably because of the tradition of the Si family. Children usually needed to hear direct words before they could understand the root of a matter. If you tried to communicate with a child in a roundabout way, not only would the other party not understand, they might even push you away impatiently. However, if you directly said that you wanted to buy lollipops for him, the other party might just reach out his hands and ask for a hug. Si Dan had only said to Xiao Liang, "I'm your father." The child did not know who his father was. Now that Kai Tang directly said that Si Dan was his father, Xiao Liang understood. All his anger was thrown to the back of his mind when he found out that Si Dan was his father. Xiao Liang looked at Si Dan just like that, again and again, again and again. Finally, Xiao Liang looked at Si Dan and asked carefully, "Are you really my father?" Si Dan answered softly. "Are you really my father?" Xiao Liang asked again as if he did not believe it. Si Dan was not annoyed. "I have a father, I really have a father." Wah! Sob sob sob. "Daddy, hug, hug." Xiao Liang threw himself into Si Dan's arms. Si Dan's heart was touched, but he also hugged Xiao Liang. Yuan Xing consciously walked out of the house and let the family of three reunite. When Kai Tang saw this, she covered her mouth, so touched that she could not speak. Although the people of the myriad continents all cultivated, just like on Earth, the children here also needed to go to school. However, the children did not learn Chinese, mathematics, English and so on like on Earth. The children of the myriad continents learned spiritual power and the path of cultivation. Here, whoever had the best grasp of spiritual power would be the best student. Xiao Liang had a full day of lessons in school today, and he was brimming with energy. La la la, la la la. After school, Xiao Liang shook his head and walked back home. The children of the myriad continents had to go to school when they were 2 years old. This was because 2-year-old children were the best time to awaken their spiritual roots. If they were older, they might not even be able to awaken their spiritual roots, and thus be unable to circulate their spiritual energy and become an immortal cultivator. If he wasn't an immortal cultivator, then he would be an ordinary person with a short lifespan of several decades. Xiao Liang skipped and walked in the direction of home. As soon as he walked out of the classroom, he saw Kai Tang. "Mother! Mother!" Little Liang stretched out his hands and pounced over. Kai Tang smiled and carried Xiao Liang. A few children who were 3 or 4 years older than Xiao Liang walked past. The schools here were divided into classes according to the strength of their spiritual power. Although little Liang was only 3 years old, his strength was already comparable to a 6 or 7-year-old child. Therefore, the children in his class were all much older than little Liang. "Kai Liang, didn't you say that your father came back and named you Sizhua? Where's your father?" One of the children who passed by asked little Liang. After asking, another child who looked more mischievous added, "He must have missed his father so much that he dreamed about him." After all, Kai Liang also had a dream about his father coming back last time. The group of children giggled. Although little Liang was still young, he could still understand these words. "My father really came back. Really? Mother, quickly say it." Little Liang tugged at Kai Tang, unwilling to accept this. No matter where it was, whether it was on Earth or the continent, children who didn't have a father since young would always be looked down upon. These children were still giggling. But just as these children were giggling, they seemed to have thought of something and were about to roll on the ground from laughing. These children were suddenly picked up by someone and thrown to the side. When everyone reacted, they saw Si Ming standing in the same place with a dark face. He cast a sidelong glance at the children who were thrown away by him and coldly said, "Who said my son didn't have a father? A bunch of stinky brats, scram. Chapter 2740. Perhaps Si Tuan's expression was too frightening. The group of children who were thrown out by Yuan Xing crawled up from the ground and cried loudly. As if they had seen something horrifying, they all ran away like bees. "Daddy! Daddy! Daddy!" Seeing Si Tuan, little Liang reached out for Si Tuan's hug. She was overjoyed. Si Ming hooked his handsome arc and took little Yang Liang into his arms. Kai Tang stood at the side. She was gratified and happy. She had always known that little Yang Liang wanted her father's company. Now, her wish was finally fulfilled. After returning home, Si Ming asked Yuan Xing to return to the God's continent first. Si Tuan had just become the first ruler of the God's continent. In this era, there were countless powerhouses running amok even on the thousands of continents, committing crimes. This was a world without rulers, where the strong were respected. To the people of the thousands of continents, the God's continent, which was a legendary place, had even more powerhouses. Si Tuan had just ruled the God's continent. Naturally, countless powerhouses would stand up and express their dissatisfaction. Si Ming asked Yuan Xing to go back first to stabilize the situation. As for him, he had to stay here for a while longer. He planned to bring Kai Tang and little Yang Liang back to the God's continent. When he told Kai Tang and little Yang Liang about his plan to bring them away from the desolate spirit continent, Kai Tang fell silent. Little Yang Liang clapped her hands and said in a daze, "Wherever Daddy goes, I'll go too." Kai Tang had stayed here for so many years after all. There was the village chief who took good care of her. There were villagers who cared for her and loved her. They could already be considered as her family. Now that she had to leave this place where she had grown up, Kai Tang's heart was naturally conflicted. "If you don't want to leave, that's fine too." Si Ming saw Kai Tang's hesitation and was about to speak. "No." Kai Tang shook her head. She paused, then raised her head to look at Si Tuan. She said to him word by word, "Wherever you go, I'll go. I, Kai Tang, will follow you for the rest of my life." Forever and ever, she would never leave. Si Dan raised a handsome arc and revealed a smile. The next second, he stretched out his other free hand and hugged Kai Tang into his arms. Then it settled. He would never let go of her hand. Although he had a mission, as long as she was there, he would definitely succeed. Definitely. "How dare you bully my son? Kai, get the hell out here." At this moment, a particularly rough female voice suddenly came from the door. After this woman's voice rang out, a series of curses followed, one after another, endless streams of curses. "Yes. Get out here. How dare you bully our child? Do you want to die or what? If you don't come out right now, I'll have my man raze your house to the ground." Angry curses could be heard from outside the house. Hearing these voices, Kai Tang's eyes suddenly moved. Si Ming's eyes flashed. The next second, he carried his son, Xiao Liang, and held Kai Tang's hand as they walked out of the door. He saw 5 or 6 children's parents standing at the door. And these 5 or 6 children who were hiding behind their parents were precisely the children who had mocked little Yang Liang at the entrance of the school, and were later thrown out by Si Ming's order. "Mother, it's him. He's the one who bullied us just now." At this moment, a child who was hiding behind his mother pointed at Si Ming. As if he had a backer, he mustered up his courage and spoke loudly. This child's mother was a woman who looked to be in her 40s. She glanced at Si Ming and shouted with her hands on her hips. "You're the one who bullied my son. Do you want to die?" Chapter 27:41. When the woman spoke, her tone was high and carried a sense of confidence. Although the parents of the other children were also dignified, they all shrank behind this woman. Needless to say, this woman was quite good-looking. Her name was Ji Tong. Everyone knew that Ji Tong's husband was called Han Shersan. In the desolate spirit continent, he was one of the best in terms of spiritual power. In this world, the deity continent was a mythical world among the thousands of continents. Any deity from the deity continent was an existence that could sweep away everyone. Not to mention the ruler of the deity continent. To the people of the thousands of continents, he was simply a legendary figure who did not even exist. In the thousands of continents, in this world where strength reigned supreme, fists spoke. Whoever's fists were strong enough could obtain respect. Furthermore, if anyone dared to disagree, even if they had reason, they had to bow to the fists. This was the rule of the cultivation world. Ji Tong's husband, Han Shersan, was one of the best in the desolate spirit continent. His strength was astonishing. He had almost become the #1 guard of the desolate spirit continent's king. Unfortunately, he did not seize the opportunity back then. But here, Han Shersan could be said to be an existence that could do whatever he wanted. When she heard that her son had been left behind, Ji Tong was furious on the spot. She immediately called her husband to support her son. Seeing this scene, Xiao Liangliang was instinctively afraid and shrank into Si Jin's arms. Not long before Si Jin returned, Xiao Liangliang was found at home because he accidentally broke a classmate's things. In the end, Kai Tang hugged Xiao Liangliang and knelt to beg for mercy. Only then was she forgiven. Kai Tang's strength was not bad, but she had a child and was alone. So, in order to protect her child, she was forced to kneel to someone. In the end, her scalp was smashed with something. Fortunately, she was fine. This was the result of a woman raising a child alone in the thousands of continents without a man at home. Ji Tong must have heard of this matter, so she brought the parents of the children and came to find them. Ji Tong's words fell. Seeing that Kai Tang and Si Jin were silent, she thought that Kai Tang and Si Jin were afraid. She rolled her eyes at Si Jin in her heart. She did not expect that Kai Tang's husband, who had not returned for many years, was just a useless guy with a body full of skin. Ji Tong looked at Kai Tang and laughed coldly. Kai Tang, I heard that you offended someone last time. You had to hold your son and kneel to that person. You even had your scalp bruised before you were forgiven. After laughing, she relied on her husband's strength to raise her eyebrows and squint at Kai Tang contemptuously. Take it off. If you strip naked and kneel in front of us today, we can forgive you. The more Ji Tong spoke, the more outrageous he became. Sven's face became darker and darker. Wife, don't talk nonsense with them. As long as you're happy, I'll take off that woman's clothes and make you happy. Ji Tong's husband, Han Shersan, stared straight at Kai Tang. As he spoke, he moved forward at a speed that was so fast that the parents of the children behind Ji Tong exclaimed in surprise as he approached Kai Tang. Kai Tang's expression suddenly changed. But just as Ji Tong's husband, Han Shersan, was about to approach Kai Tang, Si Dan suddenly stretched out his hand. Si Dan raised his hand and directly channeled his spiritual power through the air. He lifted Han Shersan's body into the air in front of everyone present, more than 10 meters above the ground. This. Suddenly seeing this scene, the faces of everyone present suddenly turned pale. Han Shersan's spiritual power was invincible in this area. But this man, he actually, just as everyone was looking at the scene in front of them in horror, Lin Fan's expression changed. Si Dan controlled his spiritual power and turned Han Shersan 160 degrees upside down in the air so that Han Shersan's head was facing the ground. Then, he did not release the spiritual power in his hand. No! Ji Tong screamed in horror. At this time, Han Shersan's head had already hit the ground heavily. There was a bloody hole in the top of his head and he died on the spot. At this time, Si Dan covered Xiao Liang's eyes and sneered. He looked at Ji Tong and the group of children's parents standing behind her and sneered in public. Bullying my wife and children, huh? Since you're here, don't even think about escaping. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.